After the applicant has finished, we will open the floor to public testimony. Each person will be called on only once during public testimony. The clerk will call the names individually of those who have signed up on the website in advance to testify. If you are here in person, please come forward. If you are on Zoom, you will be unmuted. Please state your name and address for the record, and you have 3 minutes to address the commission. If you have previously sent pictures for a presentation for the meeting, it will be displayed on the screen and our clerk will run the presentation. After all those who have signed up in advance have spoken, we will invite any others who may wish to testify. If you wish to speak on a topic, you may press raise hand button on the Zoom app, or if you're listening on the phone, please press *9 and wait for your name to be called. If you're listening on multiple devices, a computer and phone, for example, please be sure and mute the extra devices so we don't experience feedback and we can hear you clearly. When you're finished, if the commission does not have questions for you, you will no longer have the ability to speak. Please remember, we cannot call on you a second time. After all testimony has been heard, the applicant will be given another 10 minutes to come back and respond. When the applicant has finished responding to questions and concerns, we will close the public hearing and the commissioners will have the opportunity to discuss and hopefully be able to make final decisions or recommendations to the city council as needed. At this time, we will open a public hearing for item number H-21-0078, and we'll begin with the staff report.
Greetings, Madam Chair, members of the Planning Commission, Alan Tiefenbach, Associate Planner with the City of Meridian. This is a proposal for Fire Station 8 and Police Substation, and it's a conditional use permit. Site consists of about 3.5 acres of land, zoned R8, located on Oahe Storm. Basically, it's on the southwest corner, close to McMillan and McDermott, just north of the new high school. So this property was transferred to the city as part of the Gander Creek South final plat in 2019. And this property is specifically designated for a fire station and a police substation by the future land use map. And this property was actually transferred to the city for that reason. This use, a quasi-public use, is allowed by R8 as a conditional use. So again, the applicant proposes a conditional use for the construction of an 11,600 square foot fire station and an 11,500 square foot police substation. A significant amount of land around this area has already been annexed and platted in the surrounding area. This includes the Oahe High School, Gander Creek subdivision, the Oaks North and South subdivision, Chucker Ridge, and the Jump Creek subdivision. The proposed fire station and police substation would increase their response times, and the tentative developments, they were approved during the analysis. This fire station was taken into account as serving these subdivisions. The site plan that you see here, I'm sorry, it's kind of tricky to see it just because it's not very dark. The Gander Creek subdivision contains a plat note which prohibits direct lot access to north of Oahe Storm Avenue. That's what you see here. That's a collector, but it does have an exception for this particular property. There's actually a specific note that says that this property can have direct access. This is to allow expeditious and unimpeded emergency access without having to travel through the adjacent neighborhoods. So this site plan proposes one point of access for Grand Rapids Road, which is what you see here, and 2 points of access from North Oahe Storm Drive. The northern Oahe Storm access was what you see here. This would be the main access. This would provide access to both as well as to the public. The northern accesses that you see here, this is only access for the fire station. The access that you see here, this is just for employee parking. The landscape plan indicates a buffer of at least 50 feet in width along North Oahe Storm Avenue, which whereas 20 feet is required. There's several large landscaped areas at the north, which you see here, and one at the east, which would serve for employee recreation. This will benefit the employees. This landscaping plan exceeds the minimum requirements. However, as noted in the staff report, the city arborist had a comment that the maples and the ash trees, the types that were proposed, are actually an invasive species, and gave us a list of recommended trees that should be planted instead. That's one of our conditions of approval. You'll see the staff report is these 2 particular trees that were listed don't be planted. The Gander Creek subdivision, number one, provides a 10-foot wide detached pathway that's already existing. That's what you see here. There's also a sidewalk already existing along the road to the north and to the east of the property. That would be West Black Butte and West Grand Rapids Drive. There's wrought iron fencing of up to 8 feet indicated on the side plan, and that is shown along here. And that fencing is to provide security for the police vehicles. 8 feet is actually higher than is allowed. It's actually restricted to 6 foot, so they would have to do alternative compliance. However, there was a discussion this morning. The applicant called us and actually proposed, instead of wrought iron fencing, they wanted to do chain link fencing. Staff mentioned that this is not our preference, chain link fencing, but they could discuss this with the planning commission. And at the very minimum, we would recommend that if they did do chain link fencing, it would at least be vinyl covered, maybe black and not galvanized type. The last thing would just be the building elevations in general. I don't want to get into the weeds on these because this would be discussed with the CZC. This is very similar, if not exactly the same as the plans that you saw for the Meridian South Fire Station at East Lake Hazel. The field materials that are shown here are showing smooth face CMU and metal paneling. It's important to mention that our ASM, our Architectural Standards Manual, actually says those can't be used as field materials unless there's 2 other qualifying field materials. I only mention this just in the public hearing so that it's known that there's probably going to have to be some additional work done to these buildings, or they'll have to apply for a design exception. With that, we recommend approval with the conditions as listed in the staff report.
Thank you. Would the applicant like to come forward?
Yes, hi, commissioners, can you hear me?
Yes.
Thank you to staff for the report and commissioners. My name is Gunnar Gladix, an architect with Rice Fergus Miller, and my address is 11400 Olympus Way, Gig Harbor, Washington. The design team and the fire department, the police department agree with nearly all of the conditions of, and in part really actually agree with item 7. And thank you, Alan, for bringing that up. We actually had a discussion. I would like to discuss the fencing a little further. We understand that chain link fencing is not desired. And on the existing east side of the property, the developer of the Gander Creek subdivision already has a solid vinyl fence that is 6 feet in height. And we actually are proposing to continue that fencing on the east and south side of the sites to match with what the development already has, and then continue using the metal picket fence or wrought iron fence, as Ellen put it, along the north and along the east, or sorry, the west sides of the site. And so that would be the only difference from what we submitted in the report. Other than that, we agree in the building materials on the outside. We are updating those to remove the smooth face block and comply with that on both this northwest site and south site. So for the CZC. With that, I'd take any questions that the commissioners have.
I do have one question for you. The staff mentioned that you were considering chain link fence, so that's no longer part of your request at all? No chain
Correct.
link.
We've talked with the police department and public works, and we don't think that's the right thing to do. And we'd like to try to match with what the developer is doing, as well as provide the higher quality level at the front part of the station and use the picket fence as described.
Thank you. Any other questions for staff or the applicant? Okay. Madam Clerk, do we have anyone signed up to testify on this application?
Madam Chair, we do not.
That being said, is there anyone in the room or on Zoom that wishes to testify on this application? Okay. And I'm assuming you don't have any further comment then?
Madam Chair,
Oh, Commissioner Yearsley.
can I ask a question?
Sure.
So how come you don't want to use the wrought iron fence along the sidewalk piece of your property? Can I ask?
Along the border on the east side with Gander Creek.
Yeah,
We would, actually, one of the intents that the police had when we were originally planning it was to try to block out views into the backside of the police station for safety reasons. And so after talking with them about not doing chain link fencing, the solid vinyl fencing actually fulfilled that purpose in keeping people from having visibility into their kind of operations area and their workout area. And that was where we landed on thinking that the vinyl fencing matching that would be the best option.
okay, thank you.
Any other questions? With that, could I get a motion to close the public hearing on H-2021-0078?
So moved. Second.
It has been moved and seconded to close the public hearing on H-2021-0078. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. Any other thoughts, comments, or motions to be made?
Madam Chair,
Commissioner Yearsley.
who doesn't like a police station and a fire station? No, I guess my only concern, and you know, if we're trying to make the back area secure, I'm a little concerned about how secure the vinyl fence would be. I would actually more lean to, if they're trying to make it more secure, allowing, I know it's not popular, but the chain link fence be option, but I will concede to the vinyl fence, but that was my only thought.
Yes. My thought on that is probably moving more towards either vinyl or the wrought iron, but I can see their desire to have that a little more private back there.
Yep.
So I'm good with their proposed vinyl.
Madam Chair,
Mr. Yearsley.
after considering all staff applicant and public testimony, I move to approve file number H 2021-0078 as presented in the staff report for the hearing date of December 2nd, 2021. With the following modification that we allow the vinyl fence along the east side of the property.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to recommend approval for H-2021-0078 with modifications. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Next item on the agenda is an item continued from November 18th, H-2021-0071 Lennon Point Community. And we'll begin with staff report.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Appreciate the time tonight. Mine will be a little longer than the previous. I apologize, but that's just my lecture. As noted, this was continued from 2 weeks ago because I apparently can't count lots anymore. I just missed one, so I do apologize for that, but we are here tonight and we'll be getting this moving forward here. As noted, this is for Lennon Point Community. The requests before you tonight are annexation and zoning, preliminary plat, and a conditional use permit. A private street application was also submitted, but that is an administrative approval. The site consists of 8.8 acres of land currently zoned RUT, located at the southeast corner of Linder and Ustick Roads. There is no permit history or hearing level history with the city at this time. The future land use map designates this property as mixed use community, which allows residential dwellings at the density of 6 to 15 units per acre. The annexation and zoning of this property is requested for 10.41 acres, which, as you can tell, is quite larger than the 8.8, but that's because we require zoning to go to the center line, and we have two arterial streets abutting your site. You tend to add quite a bit of area of zoning that doesn't match the plat. So just to let you guys know, that's where the discrepancy is. It has a request for CC zoning, and that's 2 acres, and a request for R15, which is 8.3 acres. The preliminary plat consists of 44 residential building lots, 43 single-family and 1 multifamily lot, 1 commercial lot, and 2 common lots on 8.8 acres of land within those proposed zoning districts. The conditional use permit for multifamily development consists of a total of 18 units on 1.18 acres in the proposed R15 zoning district. Again, the applicant did request private street approval. The director/staff gave approval of this application, so there's no need for commission to act on that. The subject site does have existing city meridian zoning in all directions, as you can see on the map on the left-hand side here. The site is directly bordered to its north and west by arterial streets, Eustic and Linder, to be specific. Development of the surrounding areas are still ongoing, with detached single-family to the east and south, which is part of the Creason Creek subdivision. Multiple office buildings are being constructed to the north and the CC parcel north of Eustic. And there's existing CC zoning and an ambulance service in the CC zoning directly to the west and across Linder Road. In addition to the existing land uses around the property, the subject site contains 2 major waterways, which you can see a little better on this right-hand side map. You got this Kellogg drain here, and then I believe this is the Creason lateral here. Almost the entire site is within some form of a floodplain, floodway, floodplain, and flood zone. There's different ones. So it is important that the applicant deal with the waterways on the site. The applicant is proposing to pipe the Kellogg drain and reroute it along the south boundary or near the south boundary in order to make more area of the site usable, as well as provide adequate open space and pathways in the southwest corner of the site. The proposed land uses are attached single-family, townhomes, multifamily residential, and commercial. So you have attached single-family, which is here. You have the multifamily, and then you have townhomes, which are going to be 3 or more, which is these here and these here. And then you also have, I can't count again. I said 3 detached single-family in my staff report, but I forgot that there's a 4th detached right here. It actually has multiple residential land uses on the proposed project. These land uses are consistent with those outlined in the mixed-use community future land use designation definitions when they are properly integrated both internally and externally to the site. Overall, staff does find that the proposed site integrates the proposed uses in appropriate manners. Specifically, the applicant has proposed their multifamily residential along Eustic, as well as the commercial buildings at the hard corner at Eustic and Linder. This therefore places the most intense uses closest to their arterial, which the comp plan talks about in multiple ways. Therefore, the single-family uses are proposed on the remaining area of the site that makes up approximately 70% of the site area. The applicant is proposing the single-family portion of the site as all 2-story, except for the 6-unit townhomes here and here. So 9 units of the 43 are 3-story. The others are all proposed as 2-story. In addition to the site design and proposed uses, a certain density is required to be met for the residential projects within this future land use designation. And again, that is 6 to 15 dwelling units per acre. The proposed project is shown, or with the total units as proposed originally, is shown as approximately 7.35 units per acre. So at the very low end of the MUC designation. Therefore, it meets this requirement. Overall, staff does find the project is consistent with the comp plan and the future land use designation of mixed use community. However, staff does find that some revisions to the site plan should occur to offer a better transition from the existing single family to the east into the site. Specifically, the height disparity between the proposed 4-story multifamily along Eustic and the proposal to have alley loaded homes along the east boundary. The existing detached single-family home in Creason Creek directly adjacent to the multifamily units is a single-story home with a bonus room. Obviously, that next to 4 stories is a big disparity. Staff has called this out. despite the separation, and has proposed that the applicant basically take the top 2 units off directly adjacent to Creason Creek. Therefore, it would be 2-story here and 2-story here, and then jump up to 4-story for these. In response, the applicant provided revised elevations that showed the loss of 1 unit adjacent to the east boundary, which makes between the 4-story and the property line approximately 46 feet of separation between the fence line and 4 stories. I will leave it to the commission to determine if they want to stick with staff's recommendation and request that they take another unit, or if they are okay with that, or whatever you need to do with the multifamily. Staff does recommend that the units along the east boundary, I guess my next point, these units here, staff does recommend that these become front-loaded rather than alley-loaded. Staff recommends, I did not call this out in my staff report, specifically in a condition. I called it out saying that I did not think they were going to meet the setbacks, and they don't currently for a alley-loaded property. They're not meeting the quote-unquote front setback on the east side of the lots. I've discussed it with the applicant, and we are in agreement that we should change these to front-loaded and then move the property lines, because they technically are ending right up along the sidewalk back here. It would remove the sidewalk and extend the property lines to the east boundary, and this would become the rear yard, and they'd have the front doors on the front side as normal, which would actually, they don't have to move the homes. They can if they need to, but they'll be able to maintain the rear setback of R15, which is 12 feet. Staff made this recommendation, or is making this recommendation, because I believe that having front loaded will have less of a nuisance and less noise than what is being proposed currently. Having that additional foot traffic along the east boundary, I think, would be more of an issue for the existing residents to the east than having rear yards of single-family homes. And again, to note, the applicant and I are in agreement with that change. At least we were yesterday, so. The proposed residential uses are allowed uses within the R15 zoning district. So again, that's all of the different proposed uses for residential are allowed. The caveat to that is the multifamily, which is a conditional use, which is why we have a conditional use permit before you tonight. Future commercial uses will be analyzed with future applications submitted for that area. In regards to dimensional standards, the commercial lot meets all the required dimensional standards. But again, when we get a certificate of zoning compliance and design review in at a later date, staff will analyze that in more detail. Multifamily buildings meet all of these standards except for the height, at least originally. The applicant did revise the elevations of these buildings, and they now show compliance with the 40-foot height limit of the R15 zoning district. The single family area of the site meets all dimensional standards except for, as I noted, the east setback for those homes, as well as the center lot, and the threeplex is not the minimum 2,000 square foot lot. I do have a condition of approval to correct that prior to council in my staff report already. Multifamily conditional use is has specific use standards that they must comply with. Each multifamily unit is proposed as a 2-story unit, with the units on levels 1 and 2 differing from those on levels 3 and 4. So again, it's kind of a stacked product. That's why they're 4 stories. The lower units provide at least 132 square feet of private open space in the form of patios, and the upper units provide at least 251 square feet of private open space per unit in the form of private patios. This vastly exceeds the requirement in code for 80 square feet per unit of private open space. Each unit is proposed as being greater than 1,200 square feet. So per the specific use standards, 350 square feet per unit of common open space is also required to be provided. Based on the original number of 18 units, that equates to 6,300 square feet of common open space that should be provided to meet the specific use standards for the multifamily product. Open space for the project overall is being shared. And with that, I'll discuss that very shortly, but overall, the proposed open space is in excess of code requirements for both portions of the project. So staff does not have any concern with that. For 18 units, a minimum of 2 amenities from 2 categories within the specific use standards are required as well. The applicant is proposing a shared plaza here that has some public art, which meets both amenity requirements from the quality of life and open space categories. Therefore, staff does find that the proposed multifamily project meets the specific use standards outlined in the UDC. Now to the open space for the project, a minimum of 10% qualified open space meeting the standards in UDC 11.3G3 is required for these, well, for the single family and the multifamily at this point. Based on the proposed plat area of 8.75 acres, a minimum of 0.88 acres of qualified open space should be provided. According to the applicant's revised open space exhibit, approximately 1.64 acres of qualified open space is proposed, which is approximately 18.7%. The majority of this open space, this qualified open space, consists of this large open space area here, as well as the large mu in the center of the development and half of the arterial street buffer, which is allowed to count per code. Staff finds that the proposed open space is adequate both in the amount and its placement to satisfy all code requirements. Based on the area of the plat, a minimum of one qualified amenity is also required to be provided. The applicant has proposed 3 qualified amenities, which I'd like to note is the applicant corrected me and they were right. I stated in my staff report that the dog park is not qualifying, but it is in fact qualifying. I read code wrong and they are providing waste disposal stations, so they are allowed to have that qualify as an amenity. So the 3 amenities that are being proposed are the dog park area, which is located here, the 10-foot multi-use pathway segment, and a children's play structure, which is shown here. And those are all qualifying amenities and exceed the minimum amount. The applicant is proposing pedestrian facilities throughout the entire site that include attached sidewalks along the public road here, micropaths, and the multi-use pathway segment as discussed. All these facilities connect and integrate throughout the site as seen through the landscape plan here. You have them going through the MU, along all the private streets, which are not required per the private street standards. They will connect to the sidewalk along Linder and Ustick, which is existing, and again, throughout the entire site. Overall, staff is very appreciative of the proposed pedestrian circulation system within the site. The project also meets all off-street parking requirements per the submitted plans. However, future building permits for the single family will verify compliance with all off-street parking standards based on the number of bedrooms per unit. So each of those single family is shown with a 2-car garage and a parking pad, which will meet the parking requirements if they are 4 bedrooms or less. So it is assumed that that's what they will have to do. Access for the site is a little complicated, so bear with me here. There is, again, there are the arterial streets adjacent to the site. So Linder Road on the west, Ustick Road on the north. Access from those sites are proposed via 2 driveway connections, 1 to each. You have a driveway connection here and a driveway connection here. The Ustick Road driveway connection will be limited to a right in, right out per ACHD. This one will be a full access, as the staff report notes, a temporary full access because the access on the west side is a full access. And if ACHD limits one, they have to limit the other. So they have decided to leave this as a full access at this time. Sorry. ACHD did approve both of these access points through a review of a driveway analysis made by the applicant's traffic engineer. A TIS was not required because less than 100 units were proposed with the project. The other public access points to the site are proposed at this is a little easier, at the northeast corner and the south, because they are extending the existing public roads. You have North Zion Park Avenue, I believe, from the south, which will then connect to West Pebblestone, if I'm not mistaken here. And this is a public road through the site. The applicant is proposing a private street through the west portion of the site, as noted, and it has received administrative approval for that. So that starts here, winds around, and goes here. So this is also private because it's technically a driveway access with the drive aisle for the multifamily, drive aisle for the commercial. This is all private / commercial or multifamily drive aisle. But the official private street, which would be in an easement, starts here, winds through, and ends here. That the private street is proposed to be at least 26 feet wide, which exceeds minimum UDC requirements. and it will be within a 30-foot easement on the plat. The private street and the local street are acting as alleys for a majority of the units to make them a majority of alley loaded, which presents a new product type in the area of the city. Again, the private street meets all UDC requirements. The 3 detached homes in the southeast corner of the site are proposed with, the detached single family are proposed off of a common drive, or at least 2 of them are. And per code, you cannot have more than 4, so this therefore meets UDC standards as well. There was 2, at least as of probably 2 p.m. this afternoon, there were a couple pieces of public testimony. One from John and Karen Bittler. There was concerns of the type of residential units being proposed and the fact that they differ from Creason Creek to the east. Concerns over the inclusion of multifamily, especially considering the height. And overall, just the height disparity of the proposed units proposed with those to the east. And as usual with development, there was some concern with the increase of noise and traffic with additional units in the area. Helen and Eder Santana also stated very similar concerns regarding the proposed project. I will note there was also some discussion in those public comments about what was discussed by staff a few months ago and what was discussed at the neighborhood meeting does not align with what's being proposed, and that does tend to happen. Some of the discussions I had with the applicant, I've been working with the applicant on this probably all of 2021. I can't remember at this point. We had 5 pre-apps on this. We have worked very diligently on this project, so the plan has definitely changed over the last 10 months or so. So it does happen. I just don't want the commission or the public to think that there is any kind of bait and switch or anything changing, but those kinds of things do happen. But staff does recommend approval of the subject applications per the conditions in my staff report. And again, I would like to ask that the commission add one more recommendation, which would be for to change the units on the east boundary. I noted it right before my bullet points on my outline. It should read similar to the applicant shall revise the site plan to show those units along the east boundary, lots 1 through 12, block 2, to be front-loaded units and remove the shared pedestrian access along the east boundary. And revise the plat to show the property lines of these lots going and touching the east boundary of the site for the rear yards of these homes. So something along that, I can make it prettier for the staff report, but that would have to be part of the motion if you guys would like that and agree with staff, because I did not have a condition. After that, I will stand for any questions.
Thank you. Would the applicant like to come forward?
Madam Chair, members of the commission, I'll just upload my presentation here.
I got it.
Oh, you got it?
Yeah, you can't do that.
Presentation.
Yep. You should just be able to use the arrows. The mouse is real finicky, so I would just use the arrow buttons.
Andrew Wheeler, 2923 North Arthur Circle, Boise, Idaho, 83702, representing Architecture. And first, I'd like to just thank staff for their diligence and efforts over the last year and a half. You know, as Joe said, we've had 5 pre-apps, and this has been a pretty complicated project and site to come to a quality design solution. And thank you all for your time and attention here to review the proposal. The site currently, as Joe mentioned, in a mixed-use community zone, which has the purpose of allocating areas where community serving uses and dwellings are seamlessly integrated into the urban fabric. As noted in the staff report comments, the site is proposed as a transitional density from the existing single family to the main arterial streets. So it's a prime opportunity to have that transition that culminates at that hard corner, which is surrounded by community commercial currently. Just picking up. Am I loud enough here?
Yeah, you get to stay real close to it.
Okay. Over the past year and a half, we've worked closely with staff to come up with a quality solution to the many development problems that this site has, and we're excited to present to you Lennon Point, a mixed-use community. This image is a site entrance. This would be coming into the site from West Pebblestone. This is the demarcation between the public road and the private. So existing conditions. So looking at the site overall at an aerial view, the site's in the southeast corner of Linder and Ustick, and this shows the network of local streets that connect to the site. You can see there's 2 connections to Ustick through this local street network, as well as one on Clare Street in the south there to Linder. So there are other opportunities for traffic to reach those arterials other than the ones directly adjacent to the site. North Zion to the south intersects the site, and then West Pebblestone to the east. So here's a survey of the site, and this kind of shows the challenges that Joe mentioned. So one main challenge is the Kellogg drain. It really limited the development potential of this site. The site sat there for a long time because no one's wanted to take on the challenge of how to figure it out. So we were up for that. It also has the floodway on the southwest corner, which eats up a big portion of the site, and then as well as the flood zone, which is about half to 3/4 of the site. So we plan on raising those pads to 1 foot above base flood elevation. Access to the site, as Joe went through with on Linder and Ustick, is a little complicated to make sure that we're in compliance with ACHD. We're utilizing the existing curb cuts to provide that access, and as well as bringing through that local road, which was a big design factor. A single family to the east is a critical part of this project, and so we took steps to mitigate that and provide a like-kind product adjacent to the current 2-story and 1-story plus bonus on that. Here's some imagery of the existing site. This is the existing curb cut on Linder looking north. Site is to the right. Here's the connection from the Creason lateral to the 5-mile drain, and another vision of that. That's the Creason lateral. So this is looking southeast. This is the 5-mile drain culvert. This is looking south, and that's the existing single family in the far distance. And this is on North Zion Park Avenue, looking north. And then looking east, and you can see there's 2-story and 1 and bonus room single family. And also to note, we'll get into this, the grade elevation is 3 foot higher on the existing single family than our proposed support pads. Here's what that community currently looks like on Tumble Creek and Northwest 13th Street. And this is West Pebblestone looking west, that dead ends into the site currently. Here's a vision or an image showing that discrepancy of grade elevation of 3 feet higher. This is the existing single family in the northeast corner adjacent to that multifamily product. And then this is the curb cut on Ustick looking. So site design. So to dive into this, the requirement for mixed use community and 3 product types. So we're proposing the community commercial in the upper left, the multifamily upper right, and the single family in the main part of the site. A lot of the challenges that really drove the site, one was extending the public road, and that dictated where our driveways needed to be in part and parcel to where the homes could be and how much distance we had between lots, as well as the floodway and flood zone areas. So the floodway in the southwest, you can see that area marked there. And then the Kellogg drain. So the red is showing where we would reroute that drain underneath the hard pipe, the same outlet discharge location that it's at. So we're utilizing the non-buildable land to move that drain and provide a pedestrian amenity. Arterial street access, utilizing the existing curb cuts as mentioned earlier on Ustick and Linder. And let me go back into this. So the community building, or the commercial, is pushing that building to the hard corner to buffer the views of the parking, as well as provide 2 drive-throughs for that future use. And then the other commercial building is adjacent to the hardscape and public art to provide that additional revenue for commercial use and draw residents in. The amenities, as Joe mentioned, are the public plaza and the art, then the 10-foot pathway in the lower left, and the tot lot, as well as the dog park. The MU throughout the center was critical to, and we went through an alley low design to have porches on the front, eyes on the street, have that community feel, and be able to not just have it driveways and cars all throughout the site. It's unavoidable to have it complete. It's unavoidable to have completely throughout the site, but we did our best to try to provide the front porch feel. This shows the public road. Everything else would be private. And then the pathway plan, this just shows a little clearer without the Kellogg drain of the white pathways throughout the entire site. So there's great connectivity through the hardscape plaza to the lower southwest 10-foot pathway required by the Parks Department that would connect to the existing Creason Creek pathway of Creason Creek subdivision to the south. That needs to shift over west a little bit, but it's a detail that we're working out. Here's the open space exhibit that highlights what we're counting as open space, 44,415 square feet required, and we're providing 71,458. Here's a parking plan. This shows that in the upper left, the commercial, there's for 500 square foot per stall, requires 24 stalls. We're providing 25. In the upper right on site B, the orange would be surface parking as well as 3 on-street parking stalls. And then the blue is 2-car garages. Required are 36 required, and we're providing 44. In the single family, there's 177 required, and we're providing 201. And the yellow is on-street guest parking, with the driveways that are in dark gray would be 2-car driveways and then 2-car garages. So 4 cars per lot. This is a rendered vision of a top-down view of that. So building design, the commercial buildings are modern in nature. We don't have a tenant for those yet, but the intent is that they have a modern aesthetic, CMU block, metal panel, concrete. This would be building the larger one on the corner. And then this is the smaller one, which possibly a sandwich shop, something that's going to serve a use adjacent to that hardscape plaza. Similar materials, and you can see those on the right here, the 2 TPO roofs. And then again, a view here, and there's a few other views. So this is showing that plaza with the public art and a future commercial use, and then that mu to the left. Building A, the multifamily building. So this is level 1 and 2. This would be 1 unit. The stairs are not shown in here. They should be, but it'd be accessed from the garage direct into the unit. And then this would be levels 3 and 4. And due to the height limit, we have more of a loft situation in that 4th level. And then you can see on the right, we're losing a unit to address the single family to the east. There are a couple elevations of those. And on that bottom left image, you can see that step. And here's a section kind of showing the design of that and those stacked units. And as well as, it opened up an opportunity to bring in daylight to that upper unit, provide higher ceilings, a more robust unit, and a quality of space in those upper units. So here's showing an example of the 2-story versus the 4-story. You can see about 43, 44 feet from the property line to the 4-story is what we're proposing. The 22-foot, the small portion of the stair tower is 22 foot tall. But again, the grade is 3 foot taller on the residential side existing. So that's actual 19 feet from relative to the adjacent single family. And then we're 19'4" to the 2-story from the property line, the majority part of that far eastern unit. So here's that shows those grades. We're at 2572 for our finished floor, and the existing of that home's at 2575. And that's what that looks like currently in the current design. The same look and feel, just stepping it down to address that 2-story unit. There's another view. This is heading heading west on West Pebblestone, and with building A to your right. And then another view looking at that right in, right out on U-Stick. So this building is building B on the site, which is located facing outward onto Linder, facing west. Again, we wanted porches and front doors to face Linder rather than having garages face Linder and having that aesthetic as you're driving down there. It's a 3-story product, level 1 story at the garage level adjacent to the street, and then stepping up with board batten, traditional gable, and horizontal siding and stone. That's what that looks like there facing Linder. This is the other 3-story product of a 3-unit building. Same materials, same design aesthetic. And this is looking at that pedestrian path connection, and that's building C to the right. And you can see it kind of the right middle there as well. Yeah. Oh yeah. So the main majority of the 2-unit single families, we wanted to have some variety. So we did a D1 and a D2 is what just calling them building D. The main differences in those, and you can look at the top two images, we have a shed dormer on, I think I skipped over. So the D1, we have a gable on the main center portion, and then a hip roof on the garage portion, and then that flips to a shed dormer and a gable. So what that ends up looking like is a variety of housing types through the area, and this is that view through the mew. And this is a view at that ground level with 4-foot vinyl fences, wrought iron gates to kind of provide privacy, but keep eyes over the fence and provide connection with neighbors and people living in the area. Here's a view looking at the hip roof of the garages versus the gable. That again provides a differentiation between that street. So they're all not the same. And then we have a single family product of the 3 units to the southeast corner, which is there on the right, and that's the dog park straight ahead. So there'd be the dog park stepping out of one of those single family units. And that shows the single family units to the left. So the neighborhood meeting, a couple concerns that were brought up that Joe mentioned, mostly it's the 4-story unit at the 4-story at building A, and then the 2-story adjacent townhomes. And, you know, we have a similar issue here as we do on building A with the grade differential. There's 2575 at the grade, and that's not even at the building pad of the existing home. So likely the pad is another foot higher or a little bit higher than that 2575. Our finished floor pads are 2572. So when you look at that in section, this is a section through one of the dormer, shed dormer models. The grade raises at the right side, and so the overall height is of 19 feet to the eave would actually be 16 feet relative to the eastern homes. That's what that looks like in the east side of the property. Then this is a view on the south looking north. This is the west side looking east. And finally, the north side looking south. And with that, I'll open it for questions.
Thank you. Do you have any questions for staff or the applicant?
Madam Chair,
Mr. Gasnelli.
is the, Andrew, the commercial, is that all single level?
10, 12 foot. I mean, it's gonna be, depending on the user that goes in there, but possibly 15 feet, but no more than, not a 6-story.
Did you, and another question is, did you look at putting similar 3-story product on the north side there against U-Stick that's over to Linder?
We did. The original intent was to have a larger 2-3-story and then a step back 4th story and have a larger patio, enhanced views of the mountains out there, and then having a nice community area or private open space. With the 40-foot height limit, that became a challenge to be able to make that work. And so we ended up going with the square footage of the units needing to be at a certain mark. That's why we have the 2 stacked. So if we do 2 stacked and 2 stacked, we get to the 4. We didn't explore a 3-story option in detail.
So you didn't look at putting a similar units that are on fronting Linder to the north side?
We did not, in the spirit of mixed use community and density, being that this is the arterial of U-Stick and close to Linder, the whole area being community commercial zoned, we felt it was appropriate to have a different aesthetic that kind of matches the modern aesthetic of the commercial that transitions into the residential.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions for staff or the applicant? Okay. Madam Clerk, do we have anybody signed up to testify on this application?
Madam Chair, we had one person sign in, but not indicating a wish to testify.
With that, I'm assuming the applicant has no further comment since there's oh, sorry. Forgot about that. Anybody in the room that wishes to testify that did not sign up? Sorry. Come forward. Pardon me? That's fine. You're here. Come on up. Okay, please state your name and address for the record, and you have the timers on the screen there. You have 3 minutes.
My name is Karen Bittler. My address is 3055 Northwest 13th Street, Meridian, Idaho, 83646.
Can you pull the mic? There you go.
I don't know why I thought I should do that. Okay. So to keep me focused and centered, I'm just going to read my email because I can go off on tangents and I don't want to do that. Okay. So what I wrote to you guys was, Dear Planning Commission and City staff, we are concerned with the proposed development at 1515 West U Stick Road in Meridian. We understand the land consisting of 8 acres has been slated for multi-use development since 2005 with designated commercial area, road entrances and exits having already been discussed with fire and police departments for their use. We ask that you consider multi-use development in the form of designating single-family detached homes for the housing portion of the development, which will best blend with our Creason Creek and surrounding communities. We're California transplants. I'm from New York originally, so don't hold it against me. So we followed our family members that moved up here, and they are longtime residents of the area to Boise and Meridian. We decided to invest our hard-earned money for a very nice, comfortable home in the community of Creason Creek. We were very involved with politics in California, and now we are proudly registered voters with our new community of Meridian. We are very concerned about the property along U Stick Road being transferred into multi-family dwellings that will decrease our home values, thus impacting our family wealth and retirement. We request that you consider your decision to support the housing portion of this development for construction of only single-family detached homes. This provides a more unified, seamless corridor and environment consistent with our community and the surrounding communities. Even as you consider density requirements for this development, it could be achieved with a proposal of 6 detached single-family homes per acre. There's 43,560 square feet in an acre. So you figure if you have 6, that's a little over 7,000 square foot lots for the homes. This compromise seems reasonably doable for our community. We request, as we discuss with our community this pending development, several families have decided to sell their homes instead of fight, and we believe this will change our community forever. We're losing good neighbors. The proposed units, we were told, were 10 feet from our backyard with the front doors facing us. That's not good. The builder said they would plant numerous trees. My only question is, how many acres are they building on? I know that's like an 8.5 to 10 foot acre, because when I figured out what townhomes are going for now, new ones, they're going maybe in the high 300s, and that's an overestimate. So if you do 43 townhomes and also the apartments, the condos that they're proposing, so it would be more, and times 400,000, that's 17.2 million. If you're going to do houses, our house is, I mean, houses are going for like 700,000 now. And so if they do like 25, 30 houses instead, they're going to make more money. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Anyone else wish to testify? Certainly.
So
Please state your name and address for the
sorry.
record.
Pamela Stinnett, and it's 3036 Northwest 13th Street.
And you need to step close to the mic.
I can, okay. I'm taller than she is. It's Pamela Stinnett, and my address is 3036 Northwest 13th Street, Meridian, Idaho 83646. And along with their concerns, I'm not directly impacted by neighbors looking into my backyard, so I don't have that same issue personally, although I understand for all the people that live across the street from me, they're going to have to deal with the same thing. And I think that's a horrible thing for them. But my issues are not only is this development going in, but on the other side of Linder, there's another development going in. And so the traffic is going to be horrible. People trying to get out of the new neighborhood that you've proposed. One of the problems is that there's going to be a lot of people with fast food and everything that's going in there too. And also people trying to get out of that little development, coming out on Pebblestone, driving 55 miles an hour to get to work. Already it takes me often where I used to be able to get out on the street right away, I have to sit there. And so it slows me down going out. So I have to leave 15 minutes earlier every day. So I'm just worried about the amount of traffic. Also, the houses that are on Pebblestone have a lot of little children. And so if people are hurrying, trying to get to work, trying to compete with our traffic already, that is going to be dangerous. So at least they should have speed bumps, if nothing else. Overall, I think there's way too much of a population going into that small segment because it really isn't that big of a space. And I think it's going to impact us terribly traffic wise. People walking to the park in a lot larger numbers because of that many people there. And so it's really going to impact us as far as getting in and out of the community. Also, as Karen mentioned, it really will also impact our home pricing, even the construction of it, because nobody's going to be able to really sell their house for what it's worth during the construction phase with the trucks and everything. And, knowing it's going to be a combination of housing that, it's because of mixed use, you have different levels of housing. And I think that's really going to impact the sales anyway. But even from the time of the building portion is, because that doesn't happen very quickly either. So I'm concerned about the value of our homes, the quality of our lives, and the amount of driving fast in that whole area, making it more difficult for us to go use the parks or for us to drive to go to work or for us to pick up our children easily from the schools, and the impact it's going to have on the schools too, because there's going to be a lot of children that they're going to need to put into the schools that they can't seem to build the schools fast enough to accommodate everybody. So that's basically the main points that I have.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else wish to testify?
Hello.
Hi.
My name is Solana Santana and my address is 3075 Northwest 13th Street. My concerns is the biggest question even for you. Would like a lose of privacy of your backyard? And it's like that when we bought up that property, we were told never gonna be developed anything on the backyard. We have right now a beautiful view and our trees are basically our privacy. So my concern is, the amount of people in that corner, and you just basically never will have your little oasis. So that's the biggest concern I have. And the traffic, it's gonna be out of control because development is across the street, down the street. And, if we have a single family development there, it will be maybe more manageable, but multifamily, it's really a huge concern for me. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Shelby Shannenberger, the address 3072 Northwest 13th Street. I guess the going last is going to sound kind of like an echo, but basically our concern was the same as everybody else's, is we're just worried about the traffic. I have my little one there and we see the speeders and we see the people coming through and I see the construction and it's just concerning to us. Getting out on U-Stick alone right now is horrible. So I was just wondering if there's going to be consideration of a light going in there at all, just to get out. Also, if they punch through there, it's just going to be the people that live there. People are going to be driving through basically their driveways. And for my neighbors across the street, just having people constantly looking in their backyard. I think that the proposed single family would be better option. And I just would be concerned about the traffic very much for the kids, because we already are dealing with speeders. So if there's a way to get around that, I think that that should be considered for the safety of our neighborhood as well, that we came into and proposed of someone else's oasis in someone else's neighborhood. Well, this is ours that we live in now. And we don't really want people looking in on our backyards and looking in and having their wonderful views, and ours is taken away from us. Thank you.
Thank you. Yep. Forward.
Good evening. My name is John Bittler. I live at 3055 Northwest 13th Street. As a homeowner that has a backyard directly facing the proposed townhomes, we are concerned that the townhomes are going to be right on top of this. With a setback of only 12 feet, that's from here, from me to you. They're going to be right on top of our backyards. It's going to affect our privacy, view, and property value. We just landscaped our backyard, and I don't want to go outside and sit outside and have somebody, look into our yard. I propose for the townhomes facing all the homes on 13th Street West, maybe do a one-story townhome. A lot of people don't want to have a two-story townhome. They just want single family or single floor living. So maybe that could be taken into consideration. With the traffic, just with our 4 homes on our side, there's 10 children living there. They're always playing in the street, riding bikes. Just don't want to see anyone get hit. We just urge you to consider maybe putting some single family homes in there, just to go with the neighborhood. I know they've done a lot of work to add townhomes, but as a citizen, sorry, it's a lot. At least if you're proposing townhomes, at least on our side of 13th Street, just maybe make them single family or single level townhomes. And that won't impact the homeowners on 13th Street as much. So thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else in the room? Thank you.
My name is Patrick Rames, 11844 Chinden Ridge Drive, Boise, Idaho. These are tough projects. I understand the position you guys are in, especially with what we just heard. And I'm for the applicant. I represent the Sindens, the landowners. I just want you to see a different perspective and maybe others. The Sindens have had this property in their family for quite some time. They came to us about 3 or 4 years ago with a challenge that nothing can get done. They just been working with developers. It's fell out of contract multiple times since the last downturn. It's been going on for about 12 years. So it's been a rough. This gentleman over here has been working with the planner, Andrew, and the builder that's putting, his interest on this thing and trying to get it to where something that would fit. I've seen multifamily walk up. I've seen all kinds of different mixed use. There's been a lot of ideas. I'll have to tell you that drain, that open, the crease and lateral, all that is a big problem. They resolved it. We're happy about that. Seems like ACHD's, behind the traffic situation. I think the setbacks are, I heard 15 feet. I think it's actually 18 to the building, but we're 2-story and 3-story across the street. That's all been discussed. But if there's something that we can compromise, I think that there's some areas that could still be worked out. But the biggest issue for the seller and for the developer that's moving in is to make it fit. And that's the challenge. And I've seen a lot of guys walk from this project. I just want to see something happen. And I think the Sindens deserve that. And it's a long time coming. So with that, I hope you guys make a good decision here.
Anybody else wish to testify?
Hi, I'm Jordan Leach. I live at 3039 Northwest 13th. I do think it's sad that we feel like we have to develop all of our rural farming areas just because they're there. But some of my concerns, the traffic studies are from 2018, which doesn't reflect the amount of traffic that we have now because there's been a lot of development since then. And the other traffic study was done during 2020, which we know people were commuting less, we don't have the school traffic as much during that time. The 2 roads going out of the community onto Ustick Road are already used by many houses. I don't know how many residential houses there, but it's kind of a mix of like 3 or 4 different neighborhoods already using those roads. Also, I think that the idea that a 3-bedroom apartment only needs 2 parking spaces and 1 guest spot for every 10 apartments just isn't realistic with our current rental market. I think the way that rental prices are compared to wages, a lot of people have multiple families living in 1 apartment, maybe 3 or 4 adults. So I think that's something that needs to be taken into account. And that's it. Thanks so much.
Anybody else? Okay. Would the applicant like to come back?
Well, thank you for everyone speaking. It's good to hear everyone's perspective, and it is a challenging situation, and we're very mindful. Hence why we've gone through 5 pre-apps to find a solution that fits this site. To kind of piggyback off what Pat was saying, we did look at 3-story walk-up and multiple different iterations, locations. The city of Meridian was opposed to that for out of the gate, and wanted to see a lower dense product, which is what we provide. And also mentioning the density at 7.15, I believe, between a range of 6 and 8. So we're not pushing the density of the site. A lot of that obviously is to do with the Kellogg drain, the floodway, and those kind of requirements. To mention a couple of things that were talked about and kind of dive into those, there was a lot of talk of existing single family and this only being single family 1 level. There's existing 2-story that we saw in those images that are in that Creason Creek subdivision, and plus single story plus a bonus room. So we're not building up against a bunch of existing single family 1-story homes. There's 2-story homes already there. In the request for single family detached, our community needs housing. In the last person that we heard, providing detached single family everywhere. I mean, this is where development should go. It's where the services are. I mean, if we put detached single family and spread it all over, that's a burden on the city. It's a burden on police. It's a burden on fire. I mean, development needs to go somewhere, and on a hard corner that's already zoned community commercial all around it. To me, as an urban planner and as an urban plan designer, it makes sense that this is where that goes. As far as losing good neighbors, well, there's also a lot of more great neighbors that could come in. So I'd like to just make that point. And in regards to the 17 million in profit and, some of the numbers that were spoken about, I mean, that doesn't take into consideration any cost of the land, any cost of the construction. I mean, that's not, this isn't a money grab. I mean, yes, people are in this industry to make a living, and we're not hiding that. But it's not to just pack as many units, and I hope that the commission can see that by the efforts in the year and a half we've taken to plan a quality project. It was also mentioned as out of state. I myself am a local here in Boise, and my personal mission is to design quality spaces to make sure that land like this gets developed in a proper way. And talking on the traffic increase, and I can pull up my slide if I need to, but I showed that slide that had the interconnected local streets. There are 2 access points onto Ustick, and there's one access off of Clare Avenue onto Linder. So it's not that every car in this development is going to be coming out onto the nearest Northwest 12th onto Ustick. There's multiple ways to get around that, not to mention the private drive by the multifamily directly right in, right out onto Ustick, as well as the access point that we're providing on to Linder. School capacity, I'd like to note that in the school's staff report, they approved this project. They said that while it is tight, there is capacity at some of the middle schools and elementary schools. I believe the middle school was at capacity, but they approved it knowing that they can meet the demand. I believe it was 32 students is what that staff report said. Privacy on the eastern backyards, that's certainly a big issue and one that most people here are concerned about. We do provide currently 40-foot minimum height shade lust honey locust. That was something that's in the landscape plan now. Originally in the current design, we have that pathway with a 10-foot wide utility easement that has an irrigation line to provide adequate maintenance for that landscaping for that purpose. We're open to doing an HOA requirement or something to have a minimum amount of landscaping or type of landscaping to provide additional trees and buffers on that eastern side, which I think could be a good solution to make sure that people are protected and there's screening there. I also agree with that. I also note too, in the design, there's patios on each side, and then there's a gable roof in the middle. So the corners of those buildings are at a 2-story deck. There's not a roof or windows, over there. So the overall mass is reduced. And that was one of the reasons why it's designed that way. Setbacks that were mentioned that were 12 feet. That would be the actual setback to an invisible line that doesn't mean anything other than to the plat and planners. But the actual building is 18 feet setback. So that is much greater than 12 feet. And again, just to reiterate the developing in rural areas, development's coming and we need to provide housing. And I think we all know that and can appreciate that. And we're trying to put that in a quality area that's going to put the least amount of burden on the city and provide the most interactive community that we can that supports the city of Meridian's planning goals and provides a quality design. That's all I got.
Any questions for the applicant?
Madam Chair.
Oh, sir. You come back. Commissioner Steele.
Yeah, just so in the multifamily, you have garages at the lower level. Is that correct?
Correct.
We seem to be having issues with that, and especially as it pertains to parking. So we asked this question of everybody that has multifamily with garages: is how are you going to ensure that people are parking their cars in there and not using it for storage and parking elsewhere?
Yeah, and that has certainly come up on other projects I've worked on. One, having windows in the garages for one, so there can be a maintenance officer on the site that can inspect those garages and make sure that there aren't, looking in there to make sure there aren't just, boxes that people are actually parking there as part of the HOA. Not an invasion of privacy, but, a maintenance to have the site function as it's intended to function.
Okay, next question is not the 10-foot path that you have running up by the lateral there. Would you be amenable to extending that up to the corner of Linder and Ustick to kind of match up what's on the kind of kitty corner from that? There's a really nice bike path that runs through there. And then if that can be crossed over and provide really good access to the park without having to hit a roadway other than going across the sidewalks.
Yeah, can we pull up that presentation again? Good to look at a visual here to better understand. Okay, so we're looking at the 10-foot path and you're asking if we could extend it on the west side of that private drive parallel with Linder?
Correct. It would just basically follow Linder up to the corner. Because
But-
again, on the opposite corner of Linder and Ustick, there's a pathway that starts there, a 10-foot pathway that carries you through, and it's a really nice amenity. And to have it extend over here would basically allow people to drop right down into the park and stay off the roads.
Separate from the sidewalk existing.
Correct.
Yeah, I don't see an issue with that. I mean, currently that's the Kellogg drain easement as it is. I think that would impact a little bit of the landscape buffer there, but that's a good trade-off, I would say.
Hey, sorry, I got a lot of questions.
I walked away so soon.
That's okay. The dog part, I noticed that's on the common drive right in front of one of the properties that's on that common drive. You might want to consider moving that somewhere, even with cleanup facilities and things like that. It still smells like a dog park. So I think the resident that's going to be in that place off the common drive right by the dog park is, unless they're really, really dog people, are probably not going to be very happy with having that right in front of them. And I'm not against dog parks. I love dogs, but just might want to consider putting that somewhere where it's not as close to a resident, especially one that's kind of boxed in right there on that common drive.
Yeah, and we're working with Nampa Meridian Irrigation District on, their approvals and they're on board with this plan. They had a couple comments about moving landscaping that was in some of their easements. So possibly we could put that into those easements and make that a part, because we need to fence off that crease and lateral with a wrought iron fence anyways. And so if we could incorporate that somehow, I think that could be a solution to move it to the southwest.
Okay. Last question is just on the 4-story, especially where it's right up against that house. I mean, for good or bad, that part just doesn't mesh very well, where you have the 4-story up there against it. In my mind anyways, I mean, have you looked into, I think Commissioner Casanelli asked early on if there's like a 3-story option or an option to basically drop that down over there, because it's, to me, 4-story seems too high in general, especially when we're right up against that house over there. I mean, if this were positioned somewhere else, even over off of Linder or something like that, I think it would be less of an issue, but that's a pretty hard transition right there. I mean, for instance, if you flip that sideways, run it north to south, basically we would be saying that's not a good transition. The fact that there's only one house there is probably why staff, I would imagine, is even willing to work with it.
Yeah, that neighbor came out to the neighborhood meeting and he wasn't as opposed as I assumed he would be. He wanted larger trees and there's an existing willow that he wanted to maintain. I talked with our landscape architect on that. Is that the right type of tree for screening and longevity? But so he just wants to be screened, from it. And to me, this solves his problem when we're with the 3-foot grade differential and we're at 22 feet. So we're really at 19 feet. When his roof is higher than that. Also mentioned that the windows could be removed on that taller 4-story unit, those 2 windows, to provide no windows on that side. If that would be of any help to visual privacy perspective. We can certainly explore other options. I do believe that an urban core wants more density and wants to feel more urban, which is again kind of why we went with this design aesthetic and going with the 4 stories. But we are open to exploring options.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions for the applicant?
Madam Chair.
Yes.
I want to note about the Commissioner Seal, your question about the pathway. There is existing sidewalk, which is shown on the master pathways plan as a, what do they call it? An alternative, like it's in purple. I can't remember what the pathways coordinator calls it, but it's an on-street, pathway technically. I don't know how ACHD and the pathways coordinator would feel about extending the 10-foot in addition to it. I don't know how they would feel about that. So if you make a motion to do that, to have that revision, just please give us some flexibility to work with ACHD and our pathways coordinator to work that out.
appreciate that. And it's more of a suggestion. And I mean, I don't think it's anything that I would try and put in a motion. It's just something that I know of the area. I live in that area. I ride that bike path all the time.
Right.
I go to the park there. So to me, that's just would be a good transition if that was something that could happen. And there's kind of a template for it right on the other side of the road because they provide the sidewalk and the 10-foot path already.
Understood.
More of a suggestion.
I would agree. Thank you.
Any other questions?
Madam Chair,
Commissioner Grove?
with the commercial that's in the northwest corner, what is the primary purpose of that in terms of what type of commercial are you going to be targeting for that space?
For a while, in the pre-app meeting 1 through 3, it was a gas station is what we were looking at putting there. But that idea has been revoked for floodplain issues and also something that is a little more community based. So possibly could be, we're providing 2 drive-through lanes. I mean, it could be a pharmacy, could be a bank, could be ICCU credit union. We're not, yeah, it could be anything of that nature, I guess, that has the drive-through requirement. And then, which is why the 9,000 square foot building has that. And then the 3,000 square foot, we envision more of a Jimmy John's, a sandwich shop. I mean, it could be any kind of something that's an ice cream parlor, or that could also be 2 1,500 square foot units. That's, tenant improvements and adjacent to that plaza. So.
Okay, thanks. I was just curious if it was going to end up leaning more like office or retail, and that answers my question. So thank you.
Yeah.
And I have a question while this picture is up here. This is the sidewalk there that's going between, right by the fence and that row of trees there. That's the sidewalk there. You're thinking about losing, nope.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. To the left. Yeah. Yes.
Yeah, that right along there. So that sidewalk will no longer be there. And then those townhomes are going to be loaded the other way, right?
Right. So the design of those will change to provide more of an entry point, as they are now. There's not really a front door that kind of shows front door. I mean, you're still going to have a garage and then a front door around the garage.
Right.
But there will be some design changes. That was done in order to provide a little bit that same community feel and having people the feeling of walking up to your front door,
right,
and connected throughout that path, connected to the dog park and throughout the whole site.
But
I
that's
agree.
going to be more backdoor kind of atmosphere now.
It's gonna be private backyards.
Right.
Yeah,
So it'll be
currently-
backyards meeting up to backyards for the single family homes.
Correct.
Right. Okay.
With the building staying in the same location. So
Right.
that provides that 18-foot setback. I could go to that section real quick just to clarify the distances there. Yeah, so at the, we're at 17'10" to the front wall, and then the patio's inset, and we're 20 foot to that deck. So you're 20 foot, 10 inches, almost 21 feet if you're standing on that level 2 deck from the property line.
And I think one other question, I think staff had recommended on that multifamily unit doing 2 units instead of the 1 as a transition, losing that the 3rd and 4th story on more than just the 1 unit, correct?
Yeah, that
Are
was
you in agreement with
their
that?
recommendation is we were, originally it was, yeah, we lost the 1 unit. They're recommending 2. In conversations with Joe, their recommendation was to lose the other 4-story unit. So you'd have 2 2-stories. I would almost advocate for losing the ground floor unit here and putting some type of additional community amenity or public open space, plaza type areas, some benches, that type of thing. I think from rather than having 2 flats, and then I think just aesthetically, the mass of the building would read better and provide a community asset.
Yeah.
Rather than looking over a TPO roof or, that kind of thing when you're in that pops up to the fourth floor. Oh, sorry. Yeah. Oh, rather than looking at TPO roofing, if you're in that unit that pops up to the fourth floor and you know, you have 50 feet of roofing that it's not that aesthetically pleasing.
Okay. Any other questions for staff or the applicant? Okay.
Madam Chair.
Oh, Mr. Seal.
Uh,
Sorry, Commissioner Casanelli.
Either Andrew or Joe, if you can take a crack at this one on the commercial, if we can, I don't know if we can get a slide up of just that commercial.
Site plan.
So right now, the entry off of Linder is open right now. But in the future, that will be right in, right out. Is that correct?
Per ACHD, it is a temporary full access. So I think because of the use on the west side, I don't think there's a timeline from ACHD to restrict it. But yes, eventually it probably will be limited to right in, right out.
So my question, concern is having that, you know, with regards to the commercial up there, in looking at the traffic flow, that's gonna force, I guess that's gonna force things through that other private drive into that commercial. It's gonna impact that commercial, not positively, down the road when that is. Are we looking at that? Did you look at the potential impacts to that commercial when that may not happen for 10 years, 15 years, who knows when ACHD does that, but at some point in time, they will do that. And what's that going to do to the commercial? Is that going to wind up being, nobody's going to want that. It's going to be vacant forever because you just can't access it.
Commissioner Castellani, that's a great question. Unfortunately, that is driven vastly more by ACHD and part of why we and ACHD especially said no to a gas station and community store was access. Is the requirement to have access points closer to that busy intersection, and it's already fully improved to its width, was just a no-go. It just is not going to happen. The existing curb cut on Linder is 360 feet from the intersection already. So they're meeting all the requirements that they can meet. I don't think ACHD will allow anything closer, to be honest. Maybe the one on Linder a little closer, but I believe there is a right-hand turn lane pretty soon. You can see kind of on here, you have the edge of pavement. I think that's because there's a right-hand turn lane here. I would hope it wouldn't limit the viability. I think that's why they've proposed the uses or the building types that they have. You know, if you put a bank on the corner, it would be nice to hold the corner, and generally you don't need a ton of in and out traffic for that. You know, you use it when you need it. And then they proposed the smaller commercial building to have more of a presence for the existing residences. So hopefully it'll pick up trips from internal to this community as well as Creason Creek and those others to the east, which I didn't discuss that as much in my staff report, but that is something I do really appreciate because it really meets a lot of the mixed use points. I know it's a long-winded answer there, but I'm not too concerned with it because you have that access off of Ustick and you have the access off of Linder, both with pretty straight access into those commercial areas. And I just don't see ACHD allowing anything else. If we removed the commercial altogether, which I do not recommend, I think you're gonna get more residential, which technically has usually more trips than commercial and for most uses. And then it's going to be harder for them to meet their mixed use policies because you only have office across the street and ambulance to the west. And the northwest corner is residential. So
I get, my concern is when I'm looking at this layout is the access to that commercial coming in off of Ustick. You've either got to go through, you're accessing it through a private drive or through basically the driveway parking lot of as it stands now of those apartments there.
Right. Yeah, I see what you're saying. And I get the issues. I just don't know. I mean, you could replace one of the apartment units with more commercial, and then you have less of the residential commercial flow, discrepancy there. I understand that. I don't, from a planning perspective, that would be very difficult to mitigate. But I do understand the concern. I don't know if Andrew has any potential answers. You could do vertically integrated on that building. But again, you're gonna have a mix of residential and commercial traffic through there. I do know that ACHD is not allowing that curb cut on U-Stick to be moved. That was a hard line that they draw.
On U-Stick?
Correct.
Yeah, I don't have anything additional to add. I think you covered it pretty well.
Any other questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
Madam Chair,
Commissioner Seal.
move we close the public hearing on H 2021-0071.
Second.
It has been moved and seconded to close the public hearing on H 2021-0071. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Further thoughts? Discussion?
Madam Chair.
Yeah.
I'll jump in if you want.
Good.
I think this is always going to be, it's always difficult when you do infill. I remember not too long ago when we were doing the other side of U-Stick and Linder, and the challenges that we ran into with that parcel. Just, this is an area that has been ready to be developed for a long time. And there's going to be challenges when you have infill. You have limitations on access, you have limitations on just how you can orient different things. I like the different housing types that they've included. It matches what we were looking for in the comprehensive plan for the mixed use aspect, and being able to integrate multiple housing types along with the commercial. I think this is a good fit in terms of helping the overall area have different options. We don't want a sea of the exact same house throughout a single area. And that's one of the big reasons for a mixed use designation. I think that they've done a good job of adding in the amenities. And I think the challenges that were discussed in terms of the multifamily, I think I'd be open to the suggestions that I'm sure a few of you are going to bring up, but I'm pretty okay with whatever direction the rest of the commission thinks on going with that. I think changing the backyard from a sidewalk and an alley load product to a front load product will improve those eastern boundary units. And overall, maybe not a perfect application to meet all of the neighbors' concerns, but overall, I'm in favor with how this has been laid out and presented.
Madam Chair,
Commissioner Yearsley.
I feel like we're trying to shoehorn something in here to meet a designation that we've set back in 2005. I personally not sure if I'm in agreement with the planned union, what am I looking for? The mixed use code in this area. I think the commercial, I think you're going to struggle to have anybody want to go in on that corner. As Commissioner Casanelli said, you have no access, and the access that's there is horrible. So I think that corner is going to be a dead corner because no one's going to want to build there. The other concern that I have is I don't like the transition from the single family to this. It just seems like it's just like, you know, a single family to a larger development. I would prefer to see on the eastern boundary, single family development, and then go to a attached unit. I'd almost just nuke the, my recommendation would be to nuke the commercial, move the apartments to the corner and put some attached townhomes on that one corner next to the house. I think that gives it a better transition to the single family. I understand your concern and your loss for your views. That's a sad thing to lose. However, you know, it's unfortunate that, you know, I do believe in property rights and that this developer, this farmer at the time has the opportunity to develop his property. And so seeing that go away is sad, but yet it's understandable. But I think there's things that we can do to help mitigate the property owners next door to it and actually make it a better development. So those are my comments.
Madam Chair?
Mr. Steele.
Yeah, the property owners to the east there, you know, I understand you want to be able to look out your, you know, your backyard and see something other than a house. I've lost that view myself. So it's the reason I'm in the house that we're in, because I don't have to worry about losing that view. That said, I mean, property rights are property rights. This is well within what's going to be developed, and unfortunately, this is the way things line up. So the transition, especially with moving things, I mean, they've conceded to make these front load. So now you're going to be backyard to backyard, which is, you know, 90% of the developments that we have out there. So hopefully you'll get good neighbors. So the other part of it is, I mean, overall things seem tall in here. Even the 3-story stuff on the lender side, it just seems like it's pretty tall for this area. It hasn't developed widely yet. It's definitely coming. This will help fill that in. I look at this kind of as it's a hard corner and an infill because of everything that's going on with the waterways that are in there. You know, I would hate to give up the commercial just because I hate to give up commercial anywhere. I think it's going to be difficult to get a business in there. I don't think it's going to be impossible. And I think when the right business comes in, it'll be okay. I mean, I'd love to see a little something go in like the like what they have up in Eagle Crossing up there, where they have multiple businesses that share one space. Boise Fry Company and Waffle Love is the first one that comes to my mind. You walk into one space and you can get either one of them. Something like that, that's, you know, kind of depends more on foot traffic and local folks coming than it does on anything else, would be probably a pretty good fit in there. It'd be nice to see something like that down a little closer to the park system that we have there. I like the amenities, the walkways, and the way that all that stuff fits in. Again, and even without a 10-foot pathway that goes up to the corner, it's going to be a really good way to get to the park system without having to stay completely on the road, especially on the bridge on Linder Road there. That this basically intersects in there. That's a really dangerous place to cross unless you're on the other side of the road. When it gets to the multifamily part of this, I think 4 stories is probably too tall in my mind. And it seems to blend well with the exception of, you know, that one house that's on the corner there, right on the eastern side of the property next to it. I kind of agree with the applicant. If they do something with it, it'd almost be nicer to see them remove that whole, instead of going over another unit, just completely eliminate that and make it into a, you know, some kind of residential use, or even more parking, to be honest. Just provide a little bit more privacy for the homeowner there. I mean, the fact that that homeowner isn't here to testify and has had conversations with the applicant's good. So that's kind of where I'm at on stuff. I mean, there's a whole bunch of things going on with access and everything, but again, I look at it, this is kind of infill. And it's a hard corner, which are tough anyway. So I just hate to give up that commercial to do something else with it. Without doing that, you really can't move the multifamily. So I'm a little bit stuck on that, but as far as a project, I think it's viable and something that we can take forward.
It's my turn.
Mr. Castanelli.
I got several challenges, issues with it. And I know it's tough. I mean, if the developer had 40 acres to work with on this corner, I don't know how many iterations we went through on that property to the north, 4 or 5 at least. And unfortunately, I wasn't here when we finally approved that. So it's tough. And this one's even harder with the laterals there. And so what's happening that I'm seeing because of that is everything's getting pushed it's like shoved up into the northeast. Because I don't know how many acres are down at that down at the southwest corner, a couple almost, at least 1.5. So it really limits what can be done on this property. I like the idea of having commercial, but I think it's tough to do on this. I would maybe like to see it moved around a little bit. The 4-story unit, I can't get behind those at all. We went through mid-mile down across from the Chevron station down on U-Stick. What's going in there now? We had discussed, I think that I can't remember exactly if we eliminated all the 4 stories in there and went all to 3, but that was a big issue down there, and there was more space to work with. Sight lines weren't as bad. And just the fact that there's only a small handful of units there, these will be the only 4-story units all along U-Stick there. You're going to have a few 3-story apartment buildings down there across from the Chevron. Then you've got some 2-story, then you got single family, 1 and 2-story all along U-Stick. And then all of a sudden you got 10 4-story units, and then back down to single-story commercial. It's out of place. That's why I asked about 3-story. There's more distance, more setback off of U-Stick because of the laterals over there. I would like to see maybe the more of that higher density moved over to there, to where it's set back a little bit, and it's not up against the single family directly to the east. And then my other comment there, what seems really, really out of place, are those 3-story units up against the 2-story ones. So that are down at the bottom on the south end of that. So to me, it just seems like when I look at this, there's a lot of aspects I like about it, and don't get me wrong. I like the muse. I like, they've answered the requirement of having 3 different product types in the mixed use community. And I think for the most part, they've done a good job. The restrictions on this property, I drive by there all the time, and I've always wondered, what is somebody going to be able to do with this? Because it's really limited what can be done with it. So, I applaud them for the attempt, but it's pushing everything up, and there's not a good transition. I would like to see, not necessarily just because of having lower density, but I think it needs to be brought down a little bit so it fits a little bit better. You can still have the different property types in there, but it would be a better transition to what's to the east. Those are my comments. Right now, I am not in favor of it. The 4-story ones, that's a killer for me. I think we've got to eliminate those. And I don't know if maybe that becomes the commercial all along Ustick, move some of that over. Commissioner Yearsley suggested moving some of those apartments over to the corner. If it can move around, I think they can keep a lot of what's in there and just move it around somehow. It may require moving some of it, but right now with where it's at, I can't get behind the project as it sits.
Yeah, I appreciated the sidewalk not being on that east side and being at least front load those instead of rear. So it was more backyard to backyard, but I hadn't thought about Commissioner's Yearsley's point of just making those single family homes, but I'd be willing to, I think, leave those as townhomes, but more address. I agree that 4-story up there is a lot. Even though I love the design and the thought of having those units on the top have more light, and that's attractive. I just think 4 stories next to the residential is a problem. And that commercial, I know it's rough access, but I'm on the fence on that one. I kind of agree with Commissioner Sue. I think there's something that will come in there that doesn't have to have tons of trips, and that would be okay. I know, I mean, there's a lot of businesses that I go to that, yes, I can't take a left out of, but I go anyway and I figure it out. I mean, it just takes a little longer getting around. But I think it would end up being something useful to the neighborhood. On the other hand, that's the condos over would maybe make sense as well. I think the biggest point of contention for me is the 4 stories.
Madam Chair.
Commissioner Grove.
I understand the comments about access for the commercial, but I don't think we can, I wouldn't be in favor of losing that at all. I think people will figure out access just fine. I live next to a place, my house is 2 doors down from a commercial spot that has right in, right out access, and there's no problems there. It's constantly busy. And I think, there's other types of options that they're going to probably be able to look at, daycares, for example. Huge on my mind these days, but those are things that don't take up as much constant traffic, and you can also help serve a community that's nearby. So I think there's lots of options. The apartments, maybe we look at it, suggesting that one of those becomes commercial. Maybe that helps with that cross access piece across the top there. I don't know. Just kind of throwing that out there, but I would hate to lose any commercial.
Madam Chair.
Commissioner Steele.
I think they're close on this, and I appreciate the work that's went into it. And I think they've answered some of the concerns, by making these front load homes over on the east property. But I agree the commercial and the multifamily almost need to swap. And I'd hate to lose a hard corner, advertising is easy that way. You don't have to put a lot of signs out when everybody drives right by you. That said, it almost seems like that would be a better fit for the residents there. You're still on Ustick Road. You're going to get a lot of road traffic in there, but I mean, I'm kind of the opinion of let's maybe continue this, have them work a little bit more with city staff. Try to come up with a little bit better plan. And even in swapping the commercial and residential, you could actually bring that multifamily in such a way that on that corner, I mean, nobody's necessarily going to care on the corner if you see I would say a 3-story building there, because I think the 4-story is still too tall. But then if you put the commercial in on the other side with the road that comes in there, you could actually bring that commercial back into the property and have it, more parking towards the Ustick Road or something along those lines. So people could get in there, and you could actually expand it if you wanted to. You could actually have more commercial in that area instead of less. I don't know. It's close. It's just not there yet. And I'd rather give them a continuance than recommend a denial, because I think they're close. But I'd love to hear what anybody else thinks about that.
Madam Chair,
Mr. Yearsley.
my initial thought was the same thing, is to swap the the apartments and the commercial. I think it provides better access for the commercial and can get, I don't ever expect to have a high use, but I think it gives it better access to that site. And at that point, I don't know if I have an issue with 4-story on the corner. Because it's far enough away from the rest of the single family. It actually ties well into the 3-story next to it to kind of show some drops. I still like the idea of the detached along that east side though, but I'll concede that one.
Madam Chair.
Commissioner Casanelli.
On the east side, what I would even support, maybe not necessarily detached, but a more of a patio home feel, if in even single story patio homes, because then you might get some retired folks in there that don't want or need 2 stories. You can really get that good mix. I'm in big support of moving that commercial up along Ustick. I would still be highly opposed to 4-story if they're going to redraw that out, especially right on the corner. One of the things that if you go to the intersection of Linder and McMillan, the buildings up there, to me, they're 2-story. I think they're just 2-story commercial, but right there on the street, it's overwhelming when everything else around there is set back. You've got 1-story across the street with Fancy Freeze. You've got Walgreens. Everything's 1-story, and then all of a sudden you get these huge buildings that sort of just kind of take over everything. So it's not a good feeling to me from the street and everything around it. So I'd still be really leery, even if you put the apartments in the corner, of going that. It's the same height. We're talking 40 feet, but it's a peaked roof versus windows right up top. I like the design of those. I think they'd be cool in a lot of different places, especially the lofts. That's my thought. I would still want to go. I'd still want to see max 3-story, but again, I would want to see some more rearranging in this to better transition on the east side and better movement through. I don't want to lose the commercial either, but better access through there. I like Commissioner Grove's idea. I mean, I think this area is definitely in need of daycare and whatnot. So that would certainly work in there. But those are some of my thoughts. And I would be in full support of continuing this as well.
It sounds like we're heading to the direction of a continuance. Does anyone want to take a stab at the motion with the proper guidance?
Dates.
Come back with some and a date.
Dates. Well, I'm busy all the time, so I don't know if I care. January 6th, I think, is pretty full already. Might be able to squeeze it on the 6th. If not, then it's January 20th. It's pretty far out. We have a 5th Thursday this month, so it's, that bumps everything another week.
Yeah, and I get we've been working on, you guys have been working on it for a long time. I just think, I mean, and I think we all feel like it's close. It's just
Yeah.
like,
But I'm sure the applicant prefers continuance versus denial.
yeah.
So, it's, I think either of the dates in January probably work. Just with any continuance motion, just please try to be as clear as you can on what you're wanting to be revised or looked at so that Andrew and I can exchange emails or have a meeting or something and figure it out.
Madam Chair.
Yes.
Going in that direction.
We get reopen. Yep.
Madam Chair,
Mr. Yearsley.
I think January 20th is probably a more adequate date, with Christmas in the middle of all that. I think giving him a little bit more time to take a look at that. And because that's a fairly significant configuration change. So.
Madam Chair,
Could I get a motion to reopen the public hearing first before we?
before we do that, I have a question, just kind of in terms of what we're wanting to have them look at. I guess, do we want to specify the areas or because I'm not on the same page as everyone, I guess, in terms of what to do on the east lots. So I don't know if I would be behind saying like has to be this product type. So I'd be more in favor of letting them make some of those, having a little bit of leeway in how they decide some of that stuff.
I
Madam Chair.
agree, because I think that's the lesser point for some of us, is that so some flexibility on just taking a look at those east side. But I think the fact that they're going to be front loaded instead of rear and that sidewalk is going away is a big step in the right direction. So that may be it, but yeah, definitely at least that's what I'm kind of hearing here consensus wise. So. But before we reopen the public hearing, does any more discussion on, does somebody have the points down for the motion for the continuance? Okay.
I think so.
So
Madam Chair,
motions, Commissioner.
I
Yearsley.
make a motion, we open the public hearing on file number H 2021-0071.
Second.
It has been moved and open and seconded to reopen the public hearing on H 2021-0071. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Commissioner Steele, I will let you make that motion because you may not like the one I make, so.
I always love motions that other people make. Madam Chair,
Commissioner Seal.
I move to continue file number H 2021-0071 to the hearing date of January 20th, 2022. That seems strange to say. For the following reasons, so that the applicant and staff can work towards a better solution to the transition between the multifamily and the neighborhood to the east, including rearrangement of the commercial property and the multifamily property. That they also solidify the east side properties to be front loaded to meet the setbacks and eliminate the walking path behind. That the plat is revised accordingly, and that any work that they do together on those to revise the housing types is also included.
Do you want to limit it to 3 stories? Or are you okay with 4?
They understand our concerns.
And to provide a different, I can't say minimum height. I would say to provide something different than 4 stories for the multifamily.
Does that include if no matter where they moved it?
Yes. Including where they're at.
I'll second that one.
It has been moved and seconded to continue H-2021 00. Oops, sorry. 71. Moved my page too quick, sorry. With modifications. All those in favor to January, to continue it to January 20th. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. And I'm guessing before we start the next one, we'll take a 5-minute break. Okay. We're ready to resume and we'll open item number H-2021-0073 Inglewood Coffee Shop drive-through.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the commission. The application before you is a request for a conditional use permit. This site consists of 0.83 of an acre of land. It's zone CC located at 3330 East Victory Road. A development agreement exists for this property. The comprehensive plan future land use map designation is mixed use community.
Can you share your screen?
Oh, I'm so sorry. It apparently shared earlier. Yes. For a 2,300, I'm having one of those weeks, commissioners. I'm really glad for this weekend. Okay, so let me back up. So a conditional use permit is proposed for a drive-through for a 2,365 square foot Starbucks coffee shop within 300 feet of a residential use and zoning district, which requires approval of a conditional use permit. The proposed development plan is in substantial conformance with the provisions in the existing development agreement. The proposed use and development plan is consistent with the specific use standards in the UDC for drive-through establishments and restaurant uses with the conditions in the staff report. Off-street parking is proposed in excess of UDC standards. 9 spaces are required, 19 are provided, including 6 compact spaces. Street buffer landscaping along Eagle and Victory Roads will be installed with the subdivision improvements. ACHD is requiring the construction of a northbound right turn lane on Eagle Road. Conceptual building elevations were submitted for the proposed structure as shown. No written testimony has been received on this application. Staff is recommending approval with the conditions in the report. Staff will stand for any questions.
The applicant like to come forward.
Thank you, Sonia. Good evening, Commission. I'm Jim Peterson. Address is 6609 Old Mill Circle, Salt Lake City, Utah. And I don't have a lot to add. That's what we're planning is a coffee shop on that corner. Once again, kind of like your last one, it is a tough site to fit in there with canal and other things. It seems like it's going to be a a really good use there. We also developed the senior living community, retirement community just to the east of that we're just under construction right now. So for this mixed use, we feel like that's a really good fit. The senior community, they'll have coffee shop right there will be really good.
Any questions for staff or the applicant? Madam Clerk, do we have anybody signed up to testify on this application?
Madam Chair, one moment. I wasn't prepared either. Sonia's contagious or something. That was not to throw her under the bus. It was a bad joke. My bad.
It was in solidarity, right?
Madam Chair, no, there are no people signed in to testify.
That being said, is there anybody in the room or online who wishes to testify on this application? All right, I'm assuming the applicant has no further comment. So could I get a motion to close the public hearing on H-2021-0073?
So moved.
Second.
It has been moved and seconded to close the public hearing on H-2021-0073. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Madam Chair,
Commissioner Casanelli,
I like it. That's all I have to say.
you want to move forward with the motion?
Madam Chair.
Commissioner,
Before he
yours.
does, I need to get this on the record. So I live on that corner and I just been only a matter of time before a coffee shop was coming in there. I kept thinking they'd put it on the other side of the Rite Aid, but this is actually a pretty good location. So I think it makes sense. It gets a pretty busy area and it's on the right side of the street. So I think it works.
You care to give your preferred order?
Sure. Madam Chair, after considering all staff applicant and public testimony, I move to approve file number H-2021-0073 as presented in the staff report for the hearing date of December 22nd, 2021 with no modifications.
Second.
It has been moved and seconded to approve file number H-2021-0073. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. See if we can get through the next two just as quick. Moving on to I'd like to open H-2021-0082 Woodcrest Townhomes, and we'll begin with staff report.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the commission. The next application before you is a request for a preliminary plat. The commission heard the associated comp plan map amendment and rezone requests on this property back in June and July and recommended approval of these applications to City Council. At the council hearing, council directed the applicant to submit a preliminary plat application to be heard concurrently with the map amendment and rezone requests. So the preliminary plat is before you tonight. The site consists of 1.97 acres of land. It's zoned LO Limited Office, and it's located at 1789 North Hickory Way. The property was annexed in 1992 as part of the Angel Park subdivision. There is no development agreement on the property. The comprehensive plan future land use map designation is currently commercial. A preliminary plat is proposed consisting of 19 building lots and 4 common lots, including 1 lot for a private street on 1.97 acres of land in the proposed R15 zoning district. Proposed lots range in size from 3,789 to 2,000 square feet with an average lot size of 2,701 square feet. The proposed gross density is 9.64 units per acre. The subdivision is proposed to develop in 1 phase. Access is proposed via a private street from North Hickory Way, a collector street, street buffer landscaping, and a sidewalk exist along Hickory Way. Because this site is below 5 acres in size, minimum open space and site amenity standards do not apply. No written testimony has been received on this application. Staff is recommending approval with the conditions in the report. Staff will stand for any questions.
The applicant like to come forward.
Good evening, Madam Chair, members of the commission. My name is Blaine Womer of Womer Engineering. We're located at 4355 West Emerald in Boise. we're representing the owner or the developer on the project. And we appreciate the fact that we're here again after you approved our change of zone and the comp plan change. And we're bringing this preliminary plat to you, which is substantially the same as the comprehensive plan that we showed you when we were processing the previous applications. Sonia did a good job of explaining where we are and the chronology and how we got here. I would like to make 3 quick points of things pertaining to the map during the preparation of the preliminary plat. And that was, we did take the neighbors and the city council's concerns into account with respect to the 4-unit massing versus 3-unit massing on the northwest corner or northwest portion of the site where we're adjacent to the existing residential. We did change that to a 3-unit massing for that. Also, we provided in this application a conceptual landscape plan that addresses some of the boundary conditions there to soften the boundary, if you will, between the neighbors and our proposed development. And finally, parking was an issue during the city council meeting, and we had a parking study done, and we provided an additional 20 spaces, which is far exceeds the minimum parking that is required for the development. So those are the 3 things we did to try to enhance the development, to address the neighborhood concerns and city council concerns at the meeting. So we're here tonight. Well, I might add too, we also are in total agreement with the staff report and conditions of approval. So just here tonight to answer any questions you might have.
Any questions for staff or the applicant?
Madam Chair,
Mr. Castanelli?
can you just repeat the change that you made to on that? I guess it's the northwest corner that abuts the residential.
Well, yes, it's actually along the northwest property line because we have some, those are our closest neighbors, residential neighbors. And the concern we heard both from council again and the neighbor was that we had a 4-unit attached. It was a massed 4-unit townhome. And instead of 4, we reduced it to 3. So we reduced the massing that they would see there.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Madam Clerk, do we have anyone signed in that wishes to testify on this application?
Madam Chair, we have one signed in, Dave McDonald.
Yes, Madam Chair, Commissioners, Dave McDonald, 2579 East Grapewood. I'm one of those adjoining neighbors and I've heard comments, and I appreciate the creativity that you guys bring to these small projects and that Mr. Warmer has addressed with the 4-unit thing. I think there was one key component that has still a lingering issue. It doesn't feel like it's fully baked, needs a little more baking time for me. And that was the issue addressing parking on the collector, and as well as some questions I think Mr. Warmer can clarify, right? Because in the proposed landscape plan, which I think is the simpler issue, is proposed for skyrocket junipers to be right on top of that utility easement between my property and this development. There's a ton of utilities that run along that line there. The Nampa Meridian irrigation, all of our high-speed internet, it's all in there. And if they put skyrocket junipers on the top of those, they grow very quickly. It might become an access easement issue. You know, that's one thing that I want to point out. I'm not sure if this microphone's cutting out. The second issue.
Stay close to it.
Yeah, I'll have to scooch down. The second issue, and I appreciate your comments and similar issues. I've been watching the city council and the planning and zoning for several weeks now, and the one that stood out on Tuesday just this week are some of the same issues about parking. We're noticing people are cramming more and more and sometimes doubling up in a single unit, which is creating the demand for parking. And how can we address the issue with parking that really benefits the townhomes and not the adjacent restaurant as much? That's I'm a guy that's a big proponent of human factors and usability. And common comments that came from Tuesday was backing out onto common driveways is a safety concern. That exists here. I'd like to see the comments from you and from the developer on a possible solution to that. The other issue that stood out to me that also exists here is these parking spaces, according to the narrative that was presented, was intended to be shared for the adjacent businesses and the townhomes. And to me, Louis' Restaurant is going to be a very heavy consumer of these 17 parking spaces that are in the common drive aisles. And it seems like it's more easily accessed, the path of least resistance for the Louis' Restaurant and the adjacent businesses for those 17 parking stalls. I think part of the solution may reside within the original concept plan, which I couldn't find anywhere in any of the documentation, where the original three-unit townhome parking area was accessed from the private drive. Now, if there's a reason why that had to be removed because of, where the driveways, but it still would isolate the parking to the townhomes and make the path of least resistance to those 17 parking stalls. Maybe they have to reduce the number of parking stalls by a few to accommodate, but I would like to see the parking stalls interior to the townhomes and the path of least resistance to most of those parking for the townhomes and not the restaurant.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, just, you were talking about the utilities. On what street were you saying they had all the utilities with the landscaping?
So the adjoining border that goes along the property line by my property and the northwest border.
Okay, that's Hickory Way, right?
That's loaded with every utility you can think of.
Okay.
So.
Because it appear, oh, okay. Thank you.
I understand that's our only sign up, but is there anyone else in the room or online that wishes to testify on this application? Okay, sir.
Hello, my name is Jerry Evans, 2059 North Justin Way. And I have some concerns about the traffic off of Fairview, as that would enter into either on Hickory or into the new entrance that they're going to be creating for this development. And there's already been in the past, the new subdivision that was added just to the north of the church parking lot and the business added to the south of the church. And nothing was ever done since then to increase the traffic flow in and out of the area. And right now, as you're coming from Eagle Road, it's 3 lanes as you're going west on Fairview, and then it bottlenecks down to 2 lanes right before it gets to the intersection there at Hickory. And I'd like to propose that somehow that we could get that 3rd lane continued all the way down to the intersection and maybe even past the intersection. So that would lessen the impact on the other 2 lanes that are transiting the area going into Meridian. And I think that that would help smooth things out a little bit. And that was all I had.
Thank you. Anyone else wish to testify? Okay. Would the applicant like to come back?
Madam Chair, members of the commission, Blaine Womer again, Womer Engineering. Yes, with regard to a couple things that were brought up, the skyrocketing junipers that are proposed there, again, we're trying to do some kind of landscaping softening there at the border, which we thought that the adjacent neighbors would prefer. And certainly we're not going to plant those in the middle of an easement. So whatever offset we need to do to make that work, that's what we'll do to avoid any conflict with existing utilities. And we are aware of the existing utilities that are out there. Second, with regard to parking, that was, the city council required that we provide a parking study because they wanted to see how the interaction between the commercial and the proposed residential would work. And it was twofold. It was number one, let's see how the existing parking lot for the commercial, Louis Restaurant, the bank, and the commercial around there is working. And what they found out through interviews, they didn't just use numbers. They went out there and actually talked to the biggest traffic generator out there, which was Louis Restaurant. And they determined what their peak times were for the restaurant operation. And they went out there and they actually did counts 2 different times to make sure they were getting accurate counts. And what they found was the parking lot, which has cross-lot parking agreements, so everybody can park everywhere and utilize the entire parking lot of the commercial center. What they found was that the parking lot is only being utilized in its peak, 55% of the total parking. So there's the center is significantly overparked. And then the second part of the study was to evaluate what the impact of the townhome project would be. And I know I'm not going to get into the weeds of the study because I know it's in your report, but I do want to mention a couple important things, and that the townhome project generates a need for 27 parking spaces. Well, when you take the garages and you take the parking in front of garages and you add the spaces we've added, you come up with a total of 82 parking spaces provided by the townhome project alone, and it only needs 27. So even if you assume that everybody's going to be like everybody else and they're not going to park 2 cars in a 2-car garage, and you can take 24 of those spaces away, you still we're substantially overparked with the townhome project. So the likelihood that any of that would bleed over into Hickory parking, it just isn't going to happen because the parking is beyond sufficient for this particular project. So when you add those 2 things up, you're overparked in the commercial already, and then there's not going to be any bleed over from the townhome project because of what we're providing on site. I think it's pretty clear that the parking is not going to be an issue. So I hope that addresses those 2 issues to the commission's satisfaction, but I'm still ready to stand for any questions.
Any questions for the applicant or staff? Okay.
Thank you.
With that, can I get a motion to close the public hearing on H-2021-0082?
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to close the public hearing on H-2021-0082. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. I apologize, looks like we also have H-2021-0015 addressed in this application. Yeah, I looked at the parking study that they did, and I tend to agree. I think part of the parking problem with Louis is they all want to park at the front door instead of around the side, and that'll probably take care of it. So once that dirt lot is no longer there, and they'll actually use the parking spots. And I think they've addressed what council has directed.
Madam Chair,
Mr. Castanelli.
I tend to agree. I also think that these are probably going to cater to a little quieter community, maybe, where and on the off occasion, there's a Super Bowl party or Christmas party or something. There's plenty of parking there. I don't think it's going to be as bad. So I like the final outcome. I like that they downsized those units from 4 to 3.
Madam Chair,
Commissioner Yearsley.
no one else has any comments. I will make a motion.
Madam Chair, may I clarify something real quick? You mentioned another file number. There's actually only one application file number before you tonight.
Okay.
And that is the one on your agenda, H-2021-0082. The other file number is one you've already acted on.
Okay, that's what I want. I wondered, how did I miss that? But I glanced over at the staff report and it's still listed on there. So, okay, so just addressing H-2021-0082.
After considering all staff, applicant, and public testimony, I move to recommend approval to City Council of file number H 2021-0082 as presented in the staff report for the hearing date of December 2nd, 2021 with no modifications.
It has been moved and seconded to recommend approval of H-2021-0082. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Next item on the agenda is H-2021-0075, Rackham East and Eagle View Apartments. We'll begin with the staff report.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the commission. The last application before you tonight is a request for annexation and zoning preliminary plat and a conditional use permit. This site is located on the south side of Interstate 84, approximately quarter-mile east of South Eagle Road and north of East Overland Road on the south side of 84. A small portion of the southwest portion of this site was previously annexed with the development to the west in Zone CG. The comprehensive plan future land use map designation for the property is mixed use regional. Annexation of 25.76 acres of land is proposed with the CG zoning district as shown. A preliminary plat consisting of 2 multifamily residential building lots and 6 commercial building lots on 29.7 acres of land. And conditional use permit for a multifamily residential development consisting of 396 units on approximately 16 acres of land in the proposed CG zoning district is proposed. There is a 14-foot wide sliver of land that exists to the north of the eastern portion of the site adjacent to I-84 that is not included in the proposed subdivision. And that is depicted there in the blue on the left preliminary plat exhibit there at the top. It appears to previously have been part of ITD right-of-way for I-84 that was sold off as surplus right-of-way. Staff has determined it to be an original parcel of record, which deems this property eligible for development without that parcel. The applicant is attempting to obtain the parcel and include it in this development. However, if this doesn't happen, there will be an undeveloped enclave with county zoning surrounded by city annexed land with no access and likely no maintenance of the property if this property around it is annexed. Access exists to the site via South Rolling Hill Drive, an existing local street that serves the rural residential properties to the south, and via 2 driveway accesses from the west, which provide access to Silverstone Way, a collector street, through the adjacent commercial property. It will also provide access to the signalized intersection at Overland Road. Rolling Hill Drive is not improved to urban standards. It's narrow, lacks streetlights, and doesn't have curb gutter and sidewalk. We do not have the staff report from ACHD yet. They don't expect it to happen until hopefully later next week. ACHD did communicate to staff some of the things they may be looking at requiring. Including some site improvements to Rolling Hill Drive, which may include widening of the street in certain areas, traffic calming, and pedestrian facilities, a sidewalk likely on one side of the street. City staff is recommending streetlights are also installed as off-site improvements. The Reidenbach Canal exists along the east boundary of the site. The applicant is requesting a council waiver to allow the canal to remain open and not be piped. No connectivity to this property exists from the single-family residential development to the east. The multifamily residential development contains a mix of studio, 1 and 2 bedroom units on 16 acres of land. And this is an overall concept development plan for the site. And a portion of that, this area here on the left is part of the previous development plan on the adjacent site. The staff is recommending the multifamily property is annexed with R4 rather than CG zoning as proposed. The applicant is in agreement with staff's recommendation on that. The gross density of the development is 24.8 units per acre, which is consistent with that desired in the mixed use regional designation. Common open space and site amenities are proposed in excess of the minimum UDC standards. Shown before you there is an open space exhibit for the site. The applicant has requested alternative compliance to the private usable open space standards as noted in the staff report. The director has approved a 20% reduction to the minimum standard. Shown before you are the site amenity exhibits submitted with this application. Off-street parking does not meet the minimum UDC standards. 660 standard parking spaces are required as a minimum, including 348 covered spaces and 14 spaces for the clubhouse. 649 spaces are proposed, with 391 of those being covered in garages or carports, which includes compact spaces. Compact spaces are discouraged but may be used for parking above the minimum required. Additional parking is required to meet the minimum standards, and compact spaces will be required to be removed for those that are required. They may be used for extra spaces though, as I mentioned. This is a copy of the pedestrian circulation plan for the site. There is a pedestrian pathway around the perimeter of the site as well as internally throughout the site for pedestrian circulation. Conceptual building elevations are proposed as shown. These are the 4-story multifamily residential buildings, the fitness building and the leasing building in the multifamily development. And these are the 2 5-story office buildings proposed on the northern portion of the site along I-84. Final design is required to comply with the design standards in the Architectural Standards Manual. Only one letter of testimony was received from Pam Haynes, an adjacent property owner in Rolling Hills subdivision. She's concerned pertaining to the volume of the traffic this project will generate on Rolling Hill Drive. She requests the terminus of Rolling Hill Drive at the southern boundary of this site have bollards to block off traffic, but that would provide emergency access to the site. Staff is recommending approval of the proposed applications as noted in the staff report. Staff will stand for any questions.
Thank you. Would the applicant like to come forward?
Good evening, Commissioners. My name is John Wardle. My address is 2929 West Navigator Drive, Suite 400, Meridian, Idaho 83642. I am here representing Brighton and also BVA. We are partners on the property that's in front of you tonight, and our teammates are here if there's any questions that come up regarding the project, and they'll be available to answer questions if I cannot. Sure, I can. So tonight before you, we have a request for annexation, rezone, and preliminary plat for the Rackham East subdivision, as well and a conditional use permit for the Eagle View Apartments. As Sonia noted, the location here, the location in front of you is generally located north of Overland, south of I-84, and east of Eagle Road. The request before you tonight, like I said, is for annexation and zoning to CG and R40 of about 25.76 acres and a preliminary plat for 8 lots on 29.7 acres. The future land use map shown here on the left is designated as RG. Of note, the RG designation, the regional designation, goes all the way from Eagle Road to the east to the Reidenbach Canal, and then also goes all the way down to Overland, actually goes across Overland as well, the RG regional designation there. On the far right exhibit here, that's showing the current zoning that exists today, which is predominantly CG on the part that is brought into the city of Meridian. There is still existing R1 zoning, including the property that we own is R1 and RUT, as well as the property going south along Rolling Hills Drive down to Overland Road.
This area right here is showing you the part that we are bringing in today, the Rackham East part, which is the 25.7 acres for annexation and zoning. And then this one shows you what was originally brought in. So combined, these two properties will equal about 90 acres in total. This also shows you the existing roadway circulation, which the public roads, which are to the south of the site. And then dropping in here is the overall master plan, again, showing some internal circulation as well as the public road connections going down to Overland Road. When we started looking at the overall project for Eagle View Landing and the uses that had been approved previously and the desire to also include residential living opportunities where we have a mix of uses, we decided, or we started acquiring the property to the east all the way over the Reidenbach Canal. In doing so, we're able to bring to you a complete master plan for all the property, which is south of I-84 within the city's area of impact. The land uses in the original Rackham project are office, retail, hotel, and entertainment. And then we are bringing forward to you both office and multifamily on the Rackham East part of this. And here's a close-up of the same exhibit, just showing again the internal circulation that has been planned for the site. There are two major east-west drive aisles on the property to collect the automobile movements in and out of the site. We are intending to connect to both Silverstone. There would be a connection on the far west with Rackham Way, which ends up being a right in, right out, and then to Rolling Hills as well. And those would be the public street connections going down to Overland. Everything north where the public streets end will all be private drive aisles internal to the site. As it relates to the comp plan, and Sonia did a great job in the analysis in the staff report, that the Rackham East project, which is before you, is consistent with the city's comprehensive plan, the future land use map, and policies. And staff has noted that they believe the proposed development is generally consistent with the vision, the comprehensive plan for the area per the analysis within the staff report. Just to be clear as to what is happening here, like I mentioned before, the annexation and zoning part of this is for 25.76 acres. The preliminary plat is slightly larger than that because we are incorporating these lots, these two lots, which were previously platted, and incorporating that into the project. And so the overall preliminary plat area is 29.7 acres. The original Rackham is shown in yellow. The blue is the new Rackham East, and the red boundary is the preliminary plat area that Sonia provided to you in the staff report previously. One of the items on the within the staff report was a request to take the residential piece of that and make it R40. When we made our request, we requested all CG. Multifamily uses, regardless of the zone, whether it's R40 or a C zone, requires a conditional use permit. So we viewed it as the same. The CG already exists out there. Other projects we have done have also been done in the CG designation, but staff has asked that we modify that residential area to R40. So the split would be about 13.8 acres for commercial, and then the balance of that would be for the multifamily. So the commercial being green and the multifamily being blue. As it relates to the annexation, rezone, and preliminary plat, we do concur with staff on the conditions of approval that are before you tonight. We do agree with modifying the rezone to R40, like I indicated, for the multifamily piece, with the balance of it being CG, and also amending the existing development agreement that was previously approved in 2019, so that these two projects, both Rackham Original and Rackham East, can be combined in a complete document with one single master plan and one development agreement. Also before you tonight is this conditional use permit for the Eagle View Apartments. As I noted from the site plan, the apartment part of the project is on the southern piece of the annexation area, which I show in blue there. It is approximately 15.94 acres. We have about 24.8 units to the acre. There are a mix of unit types for a total 396. We are based on the required parking. We show 648, but staff did a recalculation today and shows 660. So we do need to look at that and evaluate it. We do have bike parking on site as well. For overall qualified open space, we're at about 3.5 acres. And we will develop this property in 2 phases, 218 units on the west side of it, including the clubhouse, pool area, amenities. And then we would come back and do the other 178 at some point in the future. However, all of the roadway improvements that you see would all be part of the original project with phase 1. In the staff report, there were a variety of elevations shown for you, but I just wanted to highlight a couple. Here in the middle of the project is the amenity core. We have 2 different buildings, which is the leasing building as well as the residence club. And then on the back side of that, there's a fitness facility and other resident facilities there. And then the lower left, this is the looking into the site, although I'm pointing the opposite direction, be looking into the site, into that building. And these are all 4-story buildings, climate controlled with elevators throughout. Again, just a quick overview of amenities here. In the center, we will have a variety of uses there, as mentioned already. Entertainment area, game areas, fitness facility, swimming pools, year-round internal spa area. There will also be outdoor gathering areas in the center area, and Wi-Fi throughout the entire property, and smart access into the units and into the community center. On the east and west, if I can just highlight this, internal to each of these buildings is a amenity core. So the buildings surround this. There is a circulation system going east to west through the site and into the middle community center there. They're pretty similar in nature. There are some variations between them. For example, one side there's sand volleyball, outdoor ping pong table, cornhole, that type of thing. On the other side, we'd have bocce ball, snook ball, but then also there'd be shade structures, outdoor barbecues, kitchen areas, benches, seating areas. So there's a lot of outdoor space that is actually accessible very close to each set of buildings on the east and the west. As Sonia noted, we did ask for alternative compliance on a couple of items. We still need to work through a few of those with them, which will be a function of sitting back down through looking at the site plan, addressing the parking, just to make sure we can make the parking work, as well as the calculation of the private open space. And after this, but prior to the certificate of zoning compliance, we would sit down with staff and talk through those issues one more time. In conclusion, we do concur with staff. The recommendations that are seen here in the staff report, including the city and agency comments and conditions. We request that P&Z approve the conditional use permit for Eagle View Apartments, giving us also the latitude to go back and work with staff on the alternative compliance items, and also request that Planning and Zoning Commission support the applications for annexation, zoning, and ultimately a modified development agreement for Rackham East and the preliminary plat. I stand for any questions you might have.
Any questions for staff or the applicant?
Madam Chair.
Mr. Yearsley.
So I'm not sure. That road that's just to the south of your clubhouse, that's not yours. I actually share some concerns about a lot of people trying to drive down that road instead of going around. Have you had looked into any provisions on that section of road that's, I know it's not on your property, but it will be impacted by your property?
Madam Chair, Commissioner Yearsley, that's a great question regarding the road that we're talking about is Rolling Hills. Rolling Hills it's a rural road, and we've had a couple of neighborhood meetings, and I know that it is a concern for all of those residents that live on Rolling Hills and the nature of the development and how things will change. While we don't have we have not received the staff report. We've been given indications as to some of those things that will be required to make that road both safer for pedestrians, but also some traffic calming on there. ACHD has noted passive traffic calming. We don't have an answer as to what that would be, but they're definitely looking at ways to make sure that the traffic that does move up and down Rolling Hills is appropriate in both speed and volume. There's also a requirement that we would install a sidewalk on one side at a minimum and add streetlights, which are not on that road currently. So those are some of the elements that would still need to be worked through with ACHD as they continue to work through their final recommendation. But that's what they have indicated thus far on those improvements on Rolling Hills Drive.
Thank you.
Any other questions for staff or the applicant? Thank you.
Thank you.
Madam Clerk, do we have anybody signed up to testify on this application?
Madam Chair, we have one signed in, Alicia Eastman.
Good evening. My name is Alicia Eastman, and I live at 1485 Rolling Hill Drive. That's singular, not hills, as it's on their map, which is Lot 3, Block 2 of Rolling Hill subdivision. My concern is traffic, and I believe that Rolling Hill should be blocked off at the end as a dead street where the current residential housing ends. In an email reply from Tom Peterson of BVA to Gary Rainey on June 7th, 2001, that was shared with some of the neighbors, Tom confirmed that the egress and ingress for this project would be Silverstone. I don't know what was going on today, but this afternoon there was some work being done, and I counted 2 cement trucks and 14 huge dirt trucks, which was a total of 32 huge vehicles going back and forth past my house between like 1 p.m. and 5. When not even the rest of the commercial lots and the business, just the 396 units, when those are done and they have all residents living in there, I won't be able to back out of my driveway. If even there's 1 car from each of those, or even half of the number, I won't be able to back out of my driveway, let alone onto Overland Road. As it was tonight, when I left my home, I left at 5:20 and I barely made the meeting at 6. And that's like Eagle and Overland is our intersection there. So it's already difficult to access. I'm not really against development, and I feel like eventually I'm probably going to have to move because they're going to do some other phase of that, and I'm even considering, well, maybe I should build on my property. I own an acre, storage units. I would have some income producing property, but as it is right now, if they want to widen the road, Rolling Hill, where you have the access to the easement that you can, that's already there that you can take to put a sidewalk there, that's going to be right on the edge of where my well is. If you widen the road anymore, that's going to affect my well, and I don't want to annex to Meridian. I like having a well, and I like having my septic. So I just think the anticipated traffic that's going to come with this project would really impact us. And I think that when they started this project, they started at the wrong end of the street. And it is a lot of housing. It sounds like a wonderful place if you're going to teleport in and out, but how are those people going to get in and out, even if you do widen Rolling Hill or do something with that and do with that project? So I just think for us, the impact would be too great of that traffic coming up and down if we didn't for while this phase is done, just make that a dead end and go use the egress through Silverstone like they said they would.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So with, that being the only one signed up, is there anyone else in the room or online that wishes to testify? Okay, forward.
More calm this time. My name is Mike Blowers. I live at 1325 Rolling Hill Drive. I think you've probably heard enough about traffic and stuff. I think that's pretty obvious what's going to be happening. I hope everyone can appreciate that this is not a normal sort of traffic increase. So I'd like to bring up some more some points we probably haven't talked about as much, but aesthetically, and I've tried to find this myself, but I'm struggling to understand why we think it's okay to have a residential neighborhood be a thoroughfare for a commercial development. I mean, obviously it's going to connect to Topgolf as well. Aesthetically, I don't understand the planning around that. It doesn't make any sense to me. I think it was by design that it's this way. I don't understand why we weren't given the opportunity. I know no one ever approached us to say, hey, would you be interested in selling your property, anything like that? And I believe that's, you know, by design, but unless someone has information for me about plans to develop our properties, I mean, I know I don't plan on moving. So I don't really understand why we're spending the money to just develop this road. It's going to look weird. I just picture like the villages at Eagle and Fairview, just picturing 15 1.5 acre 1960s homes. Just it would look silly. And I know we've been talking about aesthetics on these other projects. At the end of the day, and we've been in these talks for 4 years, no one has still answered the question, why can this not be dead-ended? Like what specific code, what specific law, what's preventing this from being a dead-ended safety access only? And if for some reason there is a law for that, I know I spoke with, sorry if I got your name wrong, John, but spoke with him in the past about at bare minimum, as part of the approval of this project, can we at least say, you know, it's a no construction access thing, something beyond signs, like contractual, something that can be fallen back on. Like this is going to be a lifestyle change. This isn't, oh, it's going to be slightly noisier because, you know, there's a neighborhood being impacted or built, you know, 2 streets down. I mean, this is, our homes sit 20 feet from the road. This street was not designed for this sort of traffic. It may be legal. It doesn't make it right. But beyond all the obvious like absurdities of what's about to happen with this, I don't understand how we want the city to look this way by design. I encourage you to take the time to drive down the street and see exactly what we're talking about. But as a final point, I also don't really know how we could come to a decision on something like this today without having those ACHD reports. I mean, it's a big part of this thing. There's a lot that's going to go into it as part of this project. And I just think at bare minimum, it needs to wait for that information before a decision is made. Thank you.
Anybody else in the room wishing to testify? Okay.
My name is Amy Waddles. I'm a resident at 1360 Rolling Hill Drive. I do want to point out kind of what was already addressed. The fact that they don't even know the street name is concerning. There's no S on it. There never has been. My comments tonight are less about the specific development. All neighbors are sharing the same concerns with the traffic, the flow of traffic. coming down and what that's going to do for our properties. Most of the residents, or some of the residents, have been in these properties long-term. And the position, so tonight is just a representation of one meeting out of 20 years since this plan has, since the city planning took effect. Every time the residents have to come out and fight whatever the new development is, whatever the new idea is, and we respect the fact we know where we live. We just saw all the videos of what's coming and what's planned for our area of town. So we're not living with any false realities as far as that goes. However, through the years it was, well, we'll just annex you. Well, you're just going to get water. Oh, it's just going to be a fire lane. Oh, now it's just going to be an access road for some apartments down your street. It's always something. And when it comes down to it, that road, kind of like what Mike said, it's a want, it's not a need. I specifically asked that at one of our neighborhood meetings. Help me understand why you need that road coming down, access down Rolling Hills. Do you need it or do you want it? We want it. It makes it convenient for the residents. It makes it convenient for the business owners, with a complete disregard for the existing homeowners. Through the years, the prevailing message from the city has been development will dictate what happens to our properties. So when we get a new business coming in, then it would be annexed into the city. Then it would connect to city water. Our neighbors had that option and they chose to sell out, and that's their right. The developer bought the property, they want to develop it, that's their right. What we're asking is not to be impacted and forced to deal with the consequences of their plan. If they want, they can, they've indicated that in the future, there's plans to potentially buy our properties out. Okay, we all know that. So why the rush to get this road there now? Give us the opportunity to retain our lifestyle and our properties and why we all chose to live there. It feels like we're being forced. The residents that are here tonight, while it's a small number, there's 50% of the residents here tonight. That's how strongly we feel. Whether or not they testify or not, that's their own decision, but we're all on the same page.
Yeah, and if everybody feels the same and just prefers to raise their hand and not testify, if what you intend to say has already been said, we can see that you're here and acknowledge that. You don't have to, everybody testify if you have nothing new to add. Okay, go ahead.
Madam Chair, Commissioners, thank you so much. Amy just spoke and we live next to Amy and she has oh yes, my name is Chris Mayoka and I live at 4160 Eastview Circle. Amy has a potbelly pig and her cow chases the pig and the pig squeals, and I have 4 kids that just love that. And we do feel like we have a shire. And it's hard not to think of BVA and Brighton as Sauron and Saruman spreading the shadow over Mordor and destroying our way of life. But I know that sounds a bit dramatic. It does feel like that. Whenever I go to Home Depot, I ask a question: should I buy this apple tree? Because I might not get to see the fruit of it. Leaving those analogies aside, 660 parking spaces. That is making our quiet residential road a freeway. We understand that I know Tommy Alquist is on record saying that this is what progress looks like. Perhaps it is. And that's fine. If this is what progress looks like in the modern day, we acquiesce to that. We just ask that you would spare us and allow us to live our lives and just keep that road a country road. I can't fathom it being a thoroughway for all that traffic. This is a first world problem, but when I was coming from Overland to take a left onto Rolling Hills, it took me about 90 seconds just to break through the traffic. That is your number one traffic problem in Meridian, is Overland and Eagle. And you're looking at increasing that traffic problem probably by tenfold with progress. Thank you.
Anyone else in the room wish to testify on this application? Thank you.
Hi, I'm Lynette Adsit. I live at 1360 Topaz Avenue. Is there a way we can get that last picture of the presentation up? I wanted the one with the overall picture where you have this rolling hill coming down and Topaz. It was the last one that was up. Is that okay to request that?
Yeah, it's just going to take him a minute because he was running it through Zoom. It wasn't our presentation. It wasn't the presentation that the clerk has.
That one right there. Perfect. One thing that I'd like to ask the commissioners to look at is the rural area between Overland and the shaded areas. This is our wonderful little oasis. I've got livestock. I know there's several neighbors that have livestock. Increasing the traffic is detrimental to them. It stresses them out. I would just ask that the consideration be of our lifestyle. And we would like to keep that lifestyle. Propose that we block off Rolling Hill. Anything that we can do to preserve this wonderful little rural area is open for suggestion. We do know progress is coming, but there's got to be a way to compromise so that we can keep our lifestyle and the community can grow. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else wishing to testify?
I am Matt Hatzit. I live at the same address, 1360 Topaz. If I would have known she was coming up, I would have asked her to ask this question. But one thing that I've always wondered is on Eagle, there's a light there where the freeway on-ramp goes, the freeway on-ramp goes east, and then there's the one coming from the west. If you just make that an access to all that commercial stuff in there, people don't have to come down Eagle all the way down Overland and get into it from there. They could come in straight from the freeway, and they could leave straight to the freeway. That would relieve a lot of congestion on Eagle and Overland and that intersection, which is the worst in the county. That was my suggestion. And I think I'm just surprised that, the light's already there. You just have to make it a four-way light instead of three-way, which it is now.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, point of order. Sir, could you state your name for the record?
Oh, sorry. Yeah, it was kind of muffled. Come back to the microphone. And just, it was kind of muffled at the beginning.
That adds it.
Okay. Anybody else in the room wishing to testify or online? Okay. Okay. We can't have shout out. Everything's got to be in the microphone, but yeah, gotcha. Thanks. That being said, would the applicant like to come back?
Madam Chair, for the record, again, John Wardle, 2929 West Navigator, Meridian, Idaho 83642. The obvious point here is that traffic is going to increase dramatically on Rolling Hill. I apologize, Amy, I did it again. No disrespect, didn't intend to throw an S on there, but Rolling Hill. It is a public right of way. It is dedicated to ACHD, and in talking with them, they do have ultimately the say on what Rolling Hill will be. There is enough room that it could be expanded to a 36-foot wide road with 2 7-foot sidewalks on each side. With that stated, that doesn't mean that won't impact all those residents. We note that. I want to acknowledge that right off. We've had conversations, and that is obviously the theme tonight. I did want to address one thing Mike Blowers mentioned, and we did have this conversation at our last neighborhood meeting about trying to limit construction traffic in total through the build out of the project to Silverstone. We've been somewhat successful in making that work, but I think that's something we could commit to and try to make that work so Silverstone is the primary source of traffic for construction. I will tell you that doesn't always trickle down to the last mile. There's always a delivery, there's always a truck that is delivering, but may not know that. But we, on other projects we've had, we've been very quick to monitor that. I think signage could be helpful as well. I do want to clarify Alicia's comment regarding the email that Tom Peterson did provide to them. We just reviewed that. It did talk about limiting traffic, but it was specific to construction traffic. And so just to be consistent there, we do feel like we can make our internal roadway improvements and make Silverstone the primary source for construction traffic through. As it relates to long-term need versus want, we feel like with the public road there, it does improve overall circulation. We do intend to connect to it and would prefer to. Ultimately, the highway district will make that call, whether it would be limited to emergency only. But we feel like having the connection there is important. In the immediate, we want to be good neighbors. We understand that the residents live there, and we do need to do our part to make the improvements as good as possible and minimize the safety issues that would occur as well. Long term, as it relates to this, all of this property is mixed use regional. I'm not saying that it will change today. In fact, there's a lot mentioned from the residents who live on Topaz. There's also, in that rural designation. But long term, it will all change. And so we feel like, at least establishing and being consistent with the connection to Rolling Hill is important. And we are committed to make the improvements both to expanding it and enhancing pedestrian and life safety with street lights as well. Pardon me, I'm losing my voice a little bit. We do feel like this project is a complete project with the uses that are in front of you today. And by tying all this together into a single project and a development agreement where we really can have all of the uses that are desired within a mixed use regional location, this does it. And over time, some of these properties of the South will also change and enhance and address the additional or new regional needs. But we feel like this is one complete cohesive project. Like I mentioned, we are requesting tonight your approval for the annexation and rezone of the project, as well as a preliminary plat, at least recommendations of those to the city council, and your approval specifically for the conditional use permit. And I stand for any questions you might have.
Any questions for the applicant?
Madam Chair,
Mr. Seal?
do you know, is there a hearing date set for ACHD? Or are they just, is that already passed and they're now just going to report?
Madam Chair, Commissioner Seal, it's my understanding that a staff report will be issued, but it will not go to commission unless there's something in the report that they feel like they need to. But it would be a staff level decision based on the review of the TIS.
Okay, thank you.
Madam Chair.
Mr. Casanelli.
John, I'm just curious. Did you look at having a traffic flow pattern through there that would direct all the traffic out Silverstone? I think is, and I don't know, is that Rackham Way? Is that even an option in that property to the far west? Because obviously Silverstone was built to handle the majority of that traffic when they're so. Yeah, everything's zoned there regional. It may never happen. If none of them, not the right ones anyway, to sell to make that happen. If those stay rural 1 acre parcels on Topaz and Rolling Hill indefinitely, what alternative did you have as far as designing traffic flow through there to come out Silverstone, if any?
Madam Chair, Commissioner Casanelli, if there's no access to Rolling Hill, then it would be Silverstone. That's where the traffic would go. And, I think if the access to Rolling Hill was eliminated, it just, Silverstone in the near term would carry all of that. Whereas Rolling Hill is a public road and it does get you access down to Overland Road. So in our traffic study and in the scoping with ACHD, we looked at all of those public roadway connections to get down to Overland as access points for the project.
If that didn't exist, could you make it work?
Madam Chair, Commissioner Casanelli, I think that becomes a question of kind of a life safety question. Could it work? Sure. But we feel like with the public road that's already dedicated and making enhancements there, that does provide also another connection to the overall development. So based on our conversations with ACHD, however, that was not part of the scope. When we look at these transportation plans, they look at all the available public roads and look to see how the traffic would be dispersed. And it was included in that review and application with them.
Any other questions for the applicant or staff?
Madam Chair.
Mr. Grove.
John, since we don't have the ACHD report, I mean, a lot of what we've talked about tonight is really related to traffic and will have an impact with what comes out on that report. Is there a reason why we should not postpone until we have that information?
Madam Chair, Commissioner Grove, it's a good question. The indication that we're getting out of ACHD and also what you find in your staff report is that the anticipating the connection to Rolling Hill. And they have looked at everything. They just haven't finalized a report, so it's not in front of you tonight. The bullet points which are in the staff report or the notes that are made in there do come from ACHD directly from their review, so that there was something on the record. So I don't know that the staff report will vary much from the recommendations or notes which are in there currently.
Okay. Any other questions? Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Madam Chair. Oh, go ahead.
I've heard the word continuance roll around, so I'm wondering, do we want to leave the public hearing open, or do we want to go ahead and close it?
Be in favor of I'd be in favor of keeping it open right now.
Agreed.
I agree.
Um,
Madam Chair.
Commissioner Seal.
I just, yeah, for this, without having the ACHD staff report, I do have a question for staff. I mean, there's a lot of people here that want to weigh in on this. They're weighing in with the city. We don't own the road, ACHD does. So is there a way to give them the information that they need in order to interface with ACHD on this? Do we know the report number, the hearing number, the whatever that might be? Or do they just get to go through the calling tree at ACHD like we all love to do?
Madam Chair, Commissioner Seal, Commissioners, the planner assigned to it is Paige Bankhead. The file number is the same as the file number in the staff report for this application. I believe they put on their prefix for ACHD. I think it's MER.
Okay.
Does that cover your question?
I think so.
They were asking if we could repeat that information so they could write it down.
Yeah, I think it cut out just a little bit on your mic.
Paige Bankhead.
Okay. And the project number would be the same as the staff number on this application. I guess I have a question for staff or legal. Is it even in our purview to block that road? To say that's not an access, it's emergency access only?
Madam Chair, I'll start. I saw my planning colleagues to join me here, but I think it's already noted.
I don't think your mic's on.
My voice is also going today as well. That be better?
Yes.
I'll yell a little bit. But as previously noted, the roads are owned and maintained and controlled by PCHD, so the city doesn't have the ability to close a road. I think you have some ability, you and the council, through your conditioning process, particularly with the conditional use permit for the apartment complex or multifamily, to place some conditions in terms of how the project is designed or how traffic flows. But I don't believe the city has the ability to close the road itself. That would be an ACHD decision. And invite the planning staff to find everything differently.
Madam Chair, I would concur with that. However, I think the city does have some input on that. As long as emergency access is provided to the site, I believe it would meet the life safety issues of fire department. But they probably should weigh in on that.
Madam Chair.
Commissioner Yearsley.
I've been thinking about that, and closing the road doesn't make really good sense because there's no way to turn around for any vehicles, or if you have larger vehicles. But I wondered if you could actually make it the last 100 feet or the last 50 feet a one-way going north. That way, someone gets down to that road, he can actually get out, but people couldn't come down that road. I think that might be a better option than having a emergency access only point, because I agree. I think it's going to be huge amount of cars going to go down that road and disturb that neighborhood. So that would be my recommendation.
I seem to remember a couple of projects where we have done something similar.
Madam Chair,
Mr. Casanelli.
if I could, just on that point, that all that is going to do really is cut half of that traffic, because you're going to get everybody going. They know they can get in that way. They're going to go in that way. They'll come out Silverstone, but they're going to go in that way. So that only cuts it to half.
Yeah.
Half is better than all, I guess, if that's the option you have. But clearly that road was never designed to handle this level of traffic. And Silverstone was designed with this project in mind to handle the traffic. But I'm definitely of the mindset right now that we need to at least continue this to see ACHD's, what they come back with. We don't know what they're going to come back with. I don't want to assume.
Madam Chair.
Commissioner Seal.
And I mean, I would add to that. I know that if the city has some input on it, I mean, I'm been involved in this and other committee meetings and things for a while, and there's been a couple mistakes that I think Meridian's made. One was eliminating the rural designation altogether, which this kind of ties into a little bit in my mind. I mean, this is a very small rural community that's right in the middle of a large area of development. I think if we didn't have some input on this and how this is going to impact those folks, it would be yet another mistake that we would be making as a city. I mean, they aren't technically residents because they're residents of the county, but here they are in the middle of this whole thing. So, as I look at the development and how it's being put together, I agree. It's kind of, we're starting at the wrong end of the road. It'd be nice to go from Overland out to the freeway, but that's not the way that this is happening. And I mean, Brighton they brought some quality products that we have reviewed. And they've also turned ACHD on their head a couple times in projects that I've had the ability to review. So, hope maybe there can be something done here with ACHD that will help preserve that road and eliminate the traffic that's on it. I would imagine that Brighton and their partners will probably definitely be policing that road a little bit more, hopefully in good faith to help this thing move forward at a future date. But I think there's a whole lot of things that can be done here for all of us to be better neighbors and to bring this project in with a little bit more tact as it would be.
Madam Chair, if I may, I'd just like to second Mr. Yearsley's point about if the access from Rolling Hill was closed off, a turnaround would be required. And, there's no place for that except for on that adjacent property, on the residential properties. So I know ACHD is probably going to require a mini roundabout on this site at the terminus of Rolling Hill. And then the remainder of the existing right of way will be vacated by the applicant. So anyway, I just wanted to second that. Thank you.
Yeah, Madam Chair, members of the commission, I'd like to just kind of clarify some things for the record. One, going back to this gentleman's comment about an access to the interchange, it's not going to happen. And the reason why is it's ITD right away. You want to eliminate conflicts on those types of roadways, as you all know. So I know this applicant has tried to approach ITD and allow for something like that to happen. Others have tried in the past as well. And that's why it's set empty for so many years, CG zone since 1994, because no one could get adequate access to this site. It's constrained by interstate on the west. On the north, we have a canal that doesn't connect to the city of Boise on the other side. And the only funnel outlet to for this project is to Overland Road. So yes, we have an issue that we've created because of these site constraints. So what we can't do, at least from a planning perspective, and I totally agree with these neighbors, their world is going to change if this road happens, because this is an intense land use on this property, including their property. Right now, their property is low density residential. It's rural residential county properties. But in the future, and I know the city's had many conversations with a lot of the neighbors out there, that we have this as mixed use regional. And when you look at a mixed use regional designation, we anticipate vehicles and trips going, it's a destination. You draw people to that place. And that's what drew Topgolf to this area. So yes, in instances where we've had challenges with access, the city's had the ability to restrict access to a road for a period of time. And then at such time as something else occurs, we open that road and make it happen and allow it to function the way it needs to function to get other people out of that area. So I think from my perspective, this commission doesn't have everything it needs to make a decision tonight. That's what you're tasked to do. You're tasked to make the finding that this is consistent with the comprehensive plan and it meets the code. If you think you need ACHD staff report to make the appropriate decision, then by all means, continue this and get that decision. If the neighbors have concerns with this project and the traffic, they should be contacting ACHD. That in itself may trigger a hearing at ACHD Commission for them to take it under consideration. Again, where they could have that ability to say, no, this is pedestrian access only, or this is emergency access, or whatever it may be. But I can tell you with my experience at the city, so many times we've restricted access from things happening. And one example is Woodbridge. I think you guys hear it every time. We've had 2 substreets to that property and we missed it. And now we still have access issues. And that's what we could potentially end up here. We've planned for this to be mixed use regional. We have a master street map that's going to have additional collector roadways to serve this area. But what we're not going to be able to do is get another access to any other property arterial except Overland. And that's the challenge where ACHD is going to have to figure out how to fund that and widen that to 7 lanes. It's planned to be a 7-lane roadway to try to address some of those congestion issues. But again, we're not going to solve that issue tonight. It's whether or not we get ACHD staff report, we fully understand those impacts, and whether or not we can mitigate that through the public hearing process. So that's all I wanted to contribute to tonight. So something for you to consideration, but certainly if the neighbors reach out to ACHD and it gets set aside to a hearing, 2 weeks isn't going to be enough. A staff, it may be 4 weeks before they get on a docket. I don't know what ACHD's schedule is, but it could be some time before that happens. So I just wanted you to be aware of that.
Madam Chair,
Commissioner Grove.
I just had a question real quick about Rolling Hill. What's its classification currently under ACHD, and what is it projected to be? Like, does it have is it, a collector, or what's its classification?
Madam Chair, Commissioner Groves, it's classified as a local street, and that's what it's planned to remain.
So my guess is what date do we want to continue this to? Because if it has to go to ACHD, do we want to push it into February?
That would be my thought.
Madam Chair, members of the commission, I think we call the applicant up. We still have the public hearing open. Let's see what they would prefer. And then we can at least decide on what we should do.
Sure, you want February?
Yes.
Madam Chair, for the record, John Wardle, 2929 West Navigator, Meridian, Idaho 83642. Obviously, we would have preferred to have had a full staff report here, not just parts of that information. As I noted before, I don't know that the staff report will be different than what we've communicated or what we've been told. But with that said, having that as a point of clarification so that this commission has that as information, and we know where ACHD will land on that. We don't disagree with that. We are concerned about pushing out till February. We do feel like there will be a staff report that will be issued here shortly. So our preference would be to not go that far out, and we pick a date sometime in January.
Madam Chair, I'd recommend January 6th if the clerk's agenda is available for this project.
Madam
I
Chair,
think with the holiday and everything, I mean, yeah,
I was just thinking, if we make it for the 6th or the 20th, but contingent upon having that, so if that report is not done and ready, then it moves to it slides out from there.
Madam Chair, that would be my thought too, is if we do January 6th, we could, and if the staff report, if it gets held up, we just continue it again. It'd be my thought until we actually get staff report.
they want to make a motion?
Madam Chair,
Commissioner Yearsley.
I move to continue file number H 2021-0075 to the hearing date of January 6th, 2022 to wait for ACHD's traffic report to understand what's going to happen with Rolling Hills.
Hill.
Sorry.
Second.
Can we add a couple things to that? Give them time to deal with the sliver of land that we don't want to have to deal with at a later date.
Okay.
And
Sorry, that was the other one.
also to work on enforcement of no construction traffic on Rolling Hill Drive.
And that one, I don't know. That one there, that was just more of an internal discussion, I think, with the construction guys. So.
Yeah, let's pause the motion for a minute. And we do want to address that sliver because that, I don't think we want to move forward without having that dealt with.
Madam Chair, Commissioners, my name is Jeffrey Wardle. My address is 251 East Front, Suite 310 in Boise. I'm counsel to the applicant. I understand the concern with that strip, but there have been more spent in terms of professional fees for attorneys and title companies and others talking about a 40-foot wide strip that got created because ITD screwed up years ago than the property is worth. Staff raised this issue. We had evaluated this issue. BVA has been negotiating to acquire that property. That property was severed years ago, then conveyed to the Petersons, and they lost it by tax deed. So that property has never had access. The owner of that property acquired it via a tax deed, has never asserted access. And ultimately, because of its configuration and shape, if and when we acquire it, and BVA has been working in that regard, it will be part of the buffer because it's within 50 feet of the interstate. So under your code, it is part of the landscaped buffer. I mean, if we can't acquire, we may go ahead and trespass anyway and landscape it. But I don't know what the condition would be that you would have us to come back and deal with it, because it is an enclave, but it is a conundrum that was created 50 years ago when ITD and that property owner decided to create it. And just to clarify from staff's presentation, it wasn't property that ITD acquired and then got rid of. They literally had a big piece of land that came down 40 feet south of the interstate. They dedicated the right-of-way through, and it was created later when everything to the south was conveyed. So if that is a concern, we understand it. It is something that we've been working on. Mr. Peterson and I have been working on that title issue for going on, well, Ton's been working on it for 3. I first addressed that when Gardner Company had this property under contract 7 years ago. So it's one of those things that let's not strain at gnats here for something that isn't that big of a deal. Give us guidance, but we cannot hold up, and we have this conversation with staff. We cannot be held hostage to go get somebody else's property and include it in our plat. There is no legal basis to do that. We've diligently tried, but I can honestly tell you that I have billed clients thousands of dollars to date over a piece of property that sold for a tax deed for approximately less than $500 15 years ago. So give us guidance, but let's not overreach.
I'm not an attorney, but I think to protect the city, you'd have to provide access to it if you don't acquire it.
And if that's the concern, then we will provide access. We can address that because, again, it's within the commercial portion and it can only be used by your code.
Yeah.
By your code, it can only be utilized for a 50-foot wide buffer because it's a non-conforming parcel. It's not developable.
I would say whatever you come back to with us has to be cleared by the city attorneys because we don't want to put the city of Meridian in a position of being then.
But again, it's not the city's fault that there's not access to that property, and there's nothing about creating this plat that would create that. But I'm passionate about it because, to be honest, I'm sick and tired of the wood parcel, because every 3 years I have to go open the file. I have to go back to First American. I have to go back to staff, and I have to share with everybody the history of this parcel. We'll provide access. That's the
Enough
concern.
said. Yeah, with that, we can do access, but it was deemed to be a parcel of record legally created through that ITD dedication. So we'll work through it, but it does not need to be included in the plat.
I don't think we need to include that motion. I personally.
Madam Chair, maybe just I can add 2 thoughts there. So I think there's 2 topics at play. First of all, I'm very sympathetic with the history of that parcel and the ordeal to try to rectify that situation. I think there's 2 issues at play here. One is the issue of access, and to the extent I think we had a concern earlier today that that sliver of parcel had legal access today, and this project would block that access. That would be a concern. In other words, if this project was to landlock that parcel, that would be a concern. If the parcel has never had legal access, that's a different story, and so I think we can have that discussion. Part 2, though, also part of the commission's concern for sure, or part of your consideration, is just the public policy consideration of the annexation. And is it in the city's best interest to approve or recommend the approval of annexation, knowing that we're going to create this small little enclave that may never be annexed, that may not be maintained, and it may be an issue for the community on a going forward basis. So that is purely a public policy question for you and ultimately for the city council. So I think there's 2 issues at play on that issue. One is the legal access issue, and that may or may not be a concern if it doesn't have access today. But there's certainly a public policy issue for the commission's consideration as well.
I guess we'd like that wrapped up in a nice, pretty little bow before the next hearing.
Oh, I don't want to include that in my motion, and it stands.
Then I'll second.
It has been moved and seconded to continue file number H-2021-0075. All those to the hearing date of January 6th. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. One more,
Madam Chair.
Commissioner Seal.
What am I? I move we adjourn.
Second.
It has been moved and seconded to adjourn. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.